Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and we are back for another Commander Chronicles. I bet you didn't think you'd get another one so soon, but here we are. I'm Gavin Verhey, and I am joined with the fantastic Melissa DeTora. How you doing today, Melissa?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, last episode went over really well. The feedback was fantastic. And we figured, especially like right now between Innistrad, we're between Midnight Hunt, we're between Crimson Vow, great time to talk about this. And maybe we'll try doing one a week. Maybe we'll take a break here and there. But especially right now, let's get into it with talking about Commander 2013. A couple things I want to get into before we start. Number one, all your comments last week were awesome. So please feel free post stuff in the comments. It's not only fun for Melissa and I to read, but it also, of course, helps boost up that algorithm. So really important for getting us noticed and making more of these. Basically, my philosophy on them right now is as long as people enjoy these episodes, we'll keep doing them. And if no one comments, then we'll just stop. Right? I'm not beholden to do the entire Commander series if no one wants to listen to these. I don't want to waste Melissa's time either. So if you enjoy them, please let us know in the comments down below. Give it a thumbs up or whatever. I also uploaded the last one onto podcasting network, so you can get it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your podcasts. I actually was like blown away. I looked at the list of where it was downloaded, and it was like so many different options. So if you prefer to like listen to this show while you take a run, or you're in the car, or you're like making a very elaborate smoothie, whatever the thing is, you can just go download it there. If you are listening to it on a podcast, please leave a comment down below for two reasons. One, I'm curious to know how many folks from YouTube go and listen to it on the podcast version too. And also, just because, once again, if you're going to leave here and go to the podcasting networks, that's awesome. That's great. Go listen to it there. But at least a comment will help boost up that algorithm, even if you're not going to listen to it all the way. And then finally, one more thing before we get into it. I want to mention one more time, Melissa, the golden rule. Do you remember what the golden rule from last time was?
I have no idea what the golden rule is.
All right. Well, the golden rule, for those who can't remember, is that these decks were all made by our coworkers. A lot of energy and time was put into these decks. So today we're going to be critiquing some things. We might have some words to say about cards like, I don't know, True-Name Nemesis, picking a random one off the top of my head. We love our coworkers. We love all the hard work that went into this. We're critiquing the ideas with, nearly 10 years of hindsight on these. So just,
all right.
Love all you.
All right. Sounds great.
Right. Of course. Now we can tear things apart as much as we want. So, Melissa, are you ready to get into today?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So before we get in, how much do you know about this series of Commander decks?
Not a lot. So this time, which I believe was 2013, right? This was a time where I was playing a lot of professional Magic. Like, I was a gold level pro. I was traveling everywhere, and I just didn't have time for Commander at that particular time. What I do remember, though, is that I needed True-Name Nemesis for a legacy deck for a GP that I was traveling to, and that's a story when we get to that, actually. Yeah,
I have a whole section in the episode later for True-Name Nemesis, because that's its own little quadrant of time, I think. So that's kind of the specter, I think, hanging over everything this week. Now, we're talking about 2013 here, but before we get to 2013, last week we covered Commander 2011. This week we're covering 2013. Do you know what happened there?
I don't know what happened there, but I can kind of guess. Like, they probably just wanted to just see what the reception was of the first Commander decks before making a second one. And also, as you know, but the audience probably doesn't know, it takes a very long time to make Magic products at Wizards. So the 2011 decks come out, maybe the reception is very positive, and they say, oh, this is great. We should do more of these. Let's make another one. Well, guess what? It takes 2 years to make another one. So that timeline checks out to me.
Yep, that's absolutely correct, right? It took a lot of effort to like get the decks made and balance them and make all the new cards and get them printed and shipped around the world. It just takes years to make that happen. So this is actually interesting in that I was coming into Wizards. I came into Wizards, as we talked about in last episode, end of 2011. So I saw basically the aftermath of the first Commander decks. So here's kind of the timeline of what happened. So the first Commander decks came out and they were an instantaneous hit. They were doing super well, absolutely fantastic. And basically it was decided we got to do more of these. But as you just noted, we couldn't get any out for about 2 years. So instead, a plan was hatched to put something out as a stopgap in 2012, like something to just be like, okay, we'll just give a Commander player something to keep them excited about the format. And then Commander 2013 will launch the deck. So before getting into Commander 2013, I want to talk about something called Commander's Arsenal. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do remember this.
So what do you remember being in Commander's Arsenal?
Okay, so I remember it was a big old box, and it had, like, I don't know, a very small amount of cards. and it was expensive. That's the most thing that I remember about this. What was in it though?
So with Commander's Arsenal, you're right. It was a small amount of cards, big box, some random stuff. It's kind of just like, hey, we got to do something fast. What can we do? So it came out on November 2nd, 2012, so towards the tail end of 2012, which is right after Return to Ravnica. So you're like very heavy into Pro Magic at this point because you made top 8 of Gate Crash. Is that right?
Yeah, that was in February of 2013.
Right. So this is like right before your ascent to Pro Tour top 8-ness.
But I was playing lots of Magic at that time. Like that was like, I was in my prime of just like traveling to a bunch of GPs and, just looking to see how far I could go in professional Magic. So yeah, that's what I was doing then.
And it worked out pretty well considering you top 8 of the Pro Tour and that helped bring you in here. So all good stuff. So what was inside the Commander's Arsenal? It had a bunch of hard to find old reprints like Sylvan Library, Scroll Rack, and Rhystic Study. And you got to see these in foil, which is pretty sweet. There also, because there were foil versions of cards from Commander 2011 that hadn't been in foil because the Commander decks didn't come in foil. So there were cards like Chaos Warp, Command Tower, and Mimeoplasm. More cards than that, but just as an example of what came in here. You got special sleeves. These are like these cool, I don't know if you remember, they're like Planeswalker foily sleeves. You got these double-sided +1/+1 counter, -1/-1 counters.
Yep. Yeah, I do remember that actually. Okay.
And then you got a life counter. And actually, last night before we were recording in the morning, I went to my closet and I pulled out the one that I have. Here it is in all its glory, Commander's Arsenal. It looks like this.
I actually have one too. I've never opened it. I got it like one of the first things that I got working for Wizards, like because they give you a ton of product is that. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to really play Commander. So I'll just kind of keep it unopened and maybe I'll use it at some point. But yep, still have mine too.
Yep. At the time I got this, I didn't play Commander either. I was just told this is coming out. You should get a copy of it from the employee store. So I made sure to grab one. I've just never opened it. Although now I probably should, given I play a lot more Commander now than I did in 2012. The Command Tower that was in here, the foil printing of Command Tower, that was the only foil printing like that in a Judge promo until we did Commander Legends. So like a lot of these were pretty scarce and hard to find foils. The thing with Commander's Arsenal is, we knew it wasn't going to be a huge print run. But of course, the popularity of Commander just exploded quite a bit after this first decks came out. So it ended up being way underprinted and stores could not get their hands on enough of these. So I definitely remember some feedback from players at the time of like, I love Commander, I can't get one of these, which was kind of a bummer.
Yep, I do remember that being a player because like as a player, I still considered buying things, even though I wasn't really like, I did play Commander a little bit, but didn't have time to play a ton. And I was like, oh, maybe I should buy one of these. And then I was like, oh, I definitely cannot buy one of these. Like, stores are sold out of them. And they were super hard to find for me too.
Yeah. So, I think those lessons were taken into account for some future products we did. But, as Commander continues to grow like wild, as we make our like allocation numbers for products, turns out a lot of times we make Commander decks or, whatever the Commander thing is. And Commander's even bigger than we thought still. So it's continually growing, kind of a challenge for us in some sense. But awesome because Commander is just continuing to do better and better. So Commander's Arsenal, a lot of lessons learned from that. But anyway, that was just a stopgap solution. A year later, we get to Commander 2013, almost exactly a year later, released November 1st, 2013. So that's coming after Theros and before Born of the Gods. Do you remember what you played in Pro Tour Theros, Melissa?
Yeah, I played Mono Blue Devotion.
Oh, the Devotion deck. That was sweet. It ended up winning the Pro Tour, great. Right?
Yep. Yeah, it was. So actually, the team that I was on was actually one of the members won the Pro Tour, Jeremy Desani.
So did you play his exact deck list?
Yeah, we all played the same deck.
So, no big deal. So when you hear out there, you might not know Melissa. Maybe you weren't playing, 9 or 8 years ago when these sets were coming out. Melissa, kind of a big deal. And she was on the top pro teams play testing this stuff. So really fantastic. And yeah, some of the decks of that Pro Tour were like, there's like Esper Control with Elspeth. Remember the 6-mana Elspeth was a big deal. Mono black with like Gray Merchants and Desecration Demon because you had Ravnica and Theros mixing together. And then of course, Mono Blue Devotion with Master of Waves and all that good stuff. So that was a sweet deck. I love that deck.
Yep. I remember that Pro Tour. It was Pro Tour Dublin, actually. And my team stayed at this hostel in Dublin. And it was a really, really fun experience. We like play tested the whole week at this place. And then when Jeremy top 8'd the Pro Tour, the whole team went back to the lobby area and just started play testing all the top 8 matchups. We could help him prepare and stuff. It was pretty fun.
if you've never been a part of it, it's like a very special thing when you have a team member that top eight's a pro tour. Cause like, a lot of other people going out to dinner or whatever the night before, but many of people will be like, okay, you top eighted. We're all going to get together. Our entire testing group's going to get together and do nothing but test your top eight matchups all night, right? We're just going to sit here and try and figure out what to go on. Or sometimes the person who top eights will go to sleep and then everyone else will like play test the matchups for them to try and figure out, okay, here's what you should do. And then they'll wake up in the morning and be like, okay, here's your sideboard guide. Here's what you should do to help out. And that's one of the big bonuses of the testing teams. That's why it's awesome to have folks that you play with and work with on these events.
Yeah. So another story that I want to say real quick about this Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So I tested with a lot of French players. And one of our team members was Guillaume Wafo-Tapa. He also top-aided that Pro Tour and he was playing as for control. And we also wanted to help him out too. So we were offering to play a bunch of the matchups for him. And he was like, no. We don't need this. I'm just going to go to sleep. I got this. Everything will be fine. You don't need to do any of that work for me. He was like super nice about it and insisted that we did not play any of the matchups. I don't remember how he finished. He might have lost to Jeremy. I forgot. I don't know. I'm sure somebody out there knows.
He definitely didn't do as well as Jeremy Design, considering
For
Jeremy
sure.
ended up winning the Pro
For
Tour.
sure.
So, but still top eight is great. I'm master Guillaume Wafo-Tapa of those control decks. Yeah, that was a great Pro Tour. I thought the deck diversity was great. But anyway, enough about Pro Tours. Good old stories though, for sure. And I'll enjoy this little walk down memory lane. I like it because it helps like cement me where I was at that time. For a lot of folks, like, oh, these were the decks that were played or the sets that were out. Anyway, Commander 2013 had 51 new cards, 51 brand new cards, following a similar model to what we saw in the previous Commander decks. And there were 5 3-color decks. Now, the decks in the first Commander release were all wedges. So that's 2 allied colors and 1 enemy color. This time around, they did the opposite. Let's do shards. And the reason why is because we did the wedges. Let's do the shards next. Worked well last time. I'm not going to go down the whole design development team in detail like I did last time, but just to list them out for anyone out there curious. Lead designer was Mark Gottlieb, along with Dan Ammons, Ethan Fleischer, Scott Larrabee, and Steve Warner. And then the lead developer was the long-lost Billy Moreno, also former Pro Tour great who's gone on to do other things, along with Ron Foster, Mark Globus, Dave Guskin, and then again, Ethan Fleischer. So these decks came out, and do you remember, besides True-Name Nemesis, do you remember any of the cards or anything interesting about these at all?
No.
Perfect.
Just no. I got nothing. Just True-Name Nemesis.
Yeah, that card overshadowed a lot. I feel like you're just going to hear us say those words a lot till we get to the section about it. So stay tuned. We'll get to True Name in a little bit. Okay, but let's dig in. Sounds like a lot of fun. So yeah, 3-color shard decks. And we'll go through them with the first one. This is Evasive Maneuvers. This is the green, white, blue deck. Now these followed a similar pattern to the first Commander decks where there were 2 new commanders and 1 reprint commander in its colors. The face of this deck was Derevi. Do you know this one? Not Deretti, which would come out later.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like Deretti, but I know those are different people. So, yeah, the card does sound familiar, but I can't think of what it does. So I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, so Derevi Imperial Tactician, it's green, white, blue for a 2/3 flying bird wizard. When it enters the battlefield or a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can tap or untap target permanent. And then the big one, this is the thing that's made this quite a force, is it has 1 green, white, blue to put Derevi onto the battlefield from the command zone. So you can just cheat the command tax. You can play it, you put it into play at instant speed, and then forever, for 4 mana, it can just sneak right into play.
Wow, that is kind of messed up.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe cheating the command tax and why it's something we try not to do?
Yeah, cheating the command tax, I don't know, it just kind of it does a lot of unhealthy things in Commander. It's repetitive. It makes opponents feel like they have no options because every time they kill it, they know that the opponent can just get it back for such a cheap price while still doing other things. So yeah, I get what they were going for with this card because they were trying to do unique things with the Commander format that we won't really do in a main set, and cheating the Commander tax, it's never been done before. Maybe players will like it. Maybe it'll be cool, So I can definitely see why they wanted to try this out. But generally, I don't really like the way that kind of thing plays out when it's just so easy to just get your commander back over and over.
Yeah, generally I've found historically when we do things to cheat the command tax, it works out kind of poorly for us. Eureka is a card we'll get to maybe several episodes from now, but that's a card I made, which I deeply regret having the Commander Ninjutsu tax, having the Commander Ninjutsu not tax as it went along because the command tax is such a core part of Commander, and just cheating that over and over is problematic. But I think you got on something good there, Melissa, which is, and you will see this throughout the decks, the first commander decks are very much like setting the stage. Here's just like some nice basic commanders. They do cool things. They're exciting. Commander 2013, I think, as we'll see as we go along, is very much like, okay, now let's break the walls of what Commander is. Let's try some really weird stuff and see what sticks and what works out. So we'll get to more of that as we go along. I looked up all the cards and all their history last night and over the course of the previous week to kind of make the notes for today. And a fun fact about Derevi is that originally, instead of having that last ability, its text was just, it doesn't cost more from the command zone. It just had the reminder text. This card doesn't have a command tax, which, is problematic for other reasons, but eventually they didn't go with that. Just put the thing that makes it bring it into play. Which also, like, a flash blocker out of the command zone is something we try not to do too much of either.
I just realized that this just comes into play like at any time. Wow. That's kind of messed up.
And when it comes into play, it taps something, right? So your opponent always has to live in fear of like, okay, they could twiddle my attacker, or, I try and do something cool, they tap my land. You have like your innocent cabal coffers out, and it's like, nope, sorry, upkeep, tap your thing.
Yeah, like, and if you have, say, a sack outlet or something, you can just kind of do this repeatedly, especially because Commander is all about like ramping and getting tons of lands into play. So like late in the game, I can just see you kind of going off with this by just putting this into play over and over.
Yeah, I mean, with like Food Chain or something, you could probably do some pretty ridiculous stuff. So although Food Chain doesn't let you pay abilities, is that right?
I don't think so. I think it just lets you cast it. So
yeah, okay. So that doesn't work. Yeah,
this doesn't work with Food Chain, but I'm sure there's something out there that this works great with.
Yeah, all kinds of ridiculous stuff with Derevi. So yeah, still quite a fear today. The next card is the other backup commander is Roon of the Hidden Realm. I'll give you a second to pull this one up, and I'll read it off for all the folks out there.
Oh, so I do know him.
Then in that case, tell me all about Roon, Melissa.
All right, he's a blink commander, right? I'm looking him up so I know, so I can reference it. But I remember like this guy was like very, very popular. Like I remember anybody who I knew who played commander was like, oh, I got to build a deck with this. This looks super fun. Yeah,
so Roon of the Hidden Realm, I'll read it off here, is 2 green, white, blue for a 4/4 Rhino Soldier. It's got Vigilance, it's got Trample. 2 tap, exile another target creature, and then return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it's just it's 2 mana basically to slide something out till the end of your turn. Also, it's a huge Rhino, so it's a 4/4 Vigilance Trample to boot. So nothing to shake a stick at there. Thoughts on Roon of the Hidden Realm?
All right, a lot of thoughts. So first, when I think about cards, I kind of like, especially old cards, I kind of think about like, what is the designer going for here? And my guess is like everybody was like, okay, what is the coolest things that you can do in Commander, right? And they kind of just like brainstormed a bunch of really cool things you can do. And somebody stumbled upon blinks. Like, what if we had a blink commander, And they just tried to make like the coolest, most powerful blink commander that they could, because that space didn't really exist back then, right? So that's like kind of where I think this idea came from. All right, now as for the actual card, wow, it looks really, really painful to play against. They can just blink anything, like their stuff, your stuff, like literally anything at any time. There is a term that players use called threat of activation, which is kind of like this is in play with the ability to activate it, but you don't like have to activate it. You can kind of activate it like when it's good for you. But the opponents will always play around the activation, like the fact that you can activate it, right? So if you have a Doomblade in your hand and you want to kill something and Roon is out, you can't really kill anything because of that threat of activation. Oh, they can just blink the creature, So for that reason, they just won't even play the Doomblade.
Right, or at least the Doomblade has to go on the Roon, if nothing else, because you target one of the other things and it just gets flickered out. During combat, it causes all kinds of challenges, right? You're like, you can flicker out their blockers, you can flicker out things that you're blocking with. Yeah, this is like a best in class, at least at the time, and even for a while after that, like green, white, blue blink commander. And that's rough. Now, players love blinking, so that's cool at least. But yeah, this guy's pretty strong.
Yeah, this guy just looks really hard to compete with. Like how do you ever play another blink commander when this guy exists? This guy just does it all.
Right. In 2013, we weren't thinking quite as much about, okay, we've got all these commanders to make, and we got to want to make sure they're carving off their own little spots, which is something we think a lot about now. So a problem with the card like Roon is that it just is like, okay, trying to make a green, white, blue blink commander better than Roon that isn't just creeping on like mana vet cost, right? Because yeah, you can make like a 3 mana Roon that's going to be better than a 5 mana Roon, but that's just a path to power creep. So like trying to make a blink commander that is stronger than Roon it's not impossible, but it's challenging and it eats up a lot of design space that I think we would have probably preferred we didn't chop off.
Yeah, absolutely.
The backup commander for this deck is a reprint. It's Rubinia Soul Singer. So there's a blast from the past right there with some brand new artwork. So one thing I'll note about this deck that's very interesting, we saw this a little bit last week. You look at Derevi, you look at Roon, and you're like, what is the linkage between these two commanders, right? What is this deck trying to do? And what do you think the deck is trying to do based on seeing Roon, which is a blinking commander, and Derevi, which is a tapping to untapping commander?
Let's see. Looking to see what this guy does.
Yeah, and then Rubinia Soul Singer, for those who don't know, is a 5 mana 2/3. You can choose not to untap her during your untap step, and then tap, gain control target creature for as long as she remains tapped. So you can like activate her, and then I think you can respond with Derevi out of the command zone to untap her and then activate her again. So there's like a funny synergy there to be had, I guess.
Yeah, it looks really powerful, actually. Probably not that fun. Like
showing up in Legends, but yeah.
Yep.
Not that fun.
Yeah, just like stealing the best thing on the board every turn just looks a little bit oppressive. Like we've made plenty of cards similar to it that are more restrictive. Like some that comes to mind are Vidalcan Shackles, which says you get to do this effect, but you have to play a lot of islands in your deck. So there's a bit of a deck building cost there. And the other one that I'm thinking of, I think it's called Callous Oppressor. It's like an onslaught card. Is that the one? Where it cares about creature types, but you get to steal. So I remember that card being really powerful in Onslaught Draft.
Fun fact, actually, Melissa, Vidalcan Shackles was inspired by Rubinia Soul Singer. So there's a fun little back for you there.
Yep.
Yes, this was the reprint from Legends. And one thing that's pretty brutal about this card is it takes legendary creatures. Often, if we make new cards for a commander, we try to not let you steal your opponent's commanders because it's pretty unfun to just get your, the thing you built your deck around yanked away from you. But this was the backup commander for this deck. So one thing about this deck that I'll note is I found this deck kind of confused. It's like, hey, I've got this tap on tap commander as the face. I've got this blink commander as the backup commander. And then looking through the deck, you've got cards like Acidic Slime, Karmic Guide, and Pilgrim's Eye, which want you to blink them, but the face commander doesn't blink things. So it's kind of like a weird deck list and feels.
Wait, which one? The main commander is not Roon, is it?
Yeah, the main commander is Derevi.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, weird. Yeah, they probably just wanted to just like try out a lot of different things in Bant. It's not a very heavily themed deck. It's just kind of like this deck does Bant stuff, and they just tried like just a bunch of different designs that Bant can do, but it's not very heavily themed. Again, like we talked about last week, the designers probably were not very sure how often they would make these decks, so they kind of wanted to just like do all the color trios, give the player a lot of cool cards, a lot of cool options, but not make the deck so heavily themed like we do today.
Yeah, exactly. And, you have some tapping, untapping stuff. You got like your Deceiver Exarch to combo with some of this stuff. It's a funny card to see in a commander deck played fairly, just as like a twiddle card. And then you've got, some cards with tap abilities like Phantom Nantuko and what have you. But definitely, a bit unusual of a mix. It's a lot of these decks are just so different from what you'd see today, right? Quite different philosophy went into these, and we'll see it kind of evolve as we go along, which should be pretty cool. A couple other cards I want to mention. So what I'm going to do is for all these decks, because this was a request from last time, is I'm going to run through all the new cards that were unique to those decks. But I'm not going to talk about each of them. I'm just going to say them. They'll show up on the screen for a second. If you want to know what they are, you can just pause the video and look at them. If you're on a podcast, I'm sorry, you can go look them up on your own time. But the new cards that were just in this deck were Bane of Progress, which has gone on to do quite a lot, Djinn of Infinite Deceits, Surveyor's Scope, Tempt with Glory, Unexpectedly Absent, and Angel of Finality. And a fun fact about Angel of Finality, I don't know if you know this one or not, Melissa, this is a 3-dub for a 3/4 flyer. When it ETBs, you exile target player's graveyard. Originally, this was an attack trigger, and then they got changed into a ETB trigger. So that was quite a difference that they changed on this. But they made it an ETB trigger, presumably to combo with Roon, I would guess. So you'd want to blink it.
Yeah. Also, I think this on an attack trigger just looks like pretty unfun. Like if you're playing a graveyard deck, you just don't have a graveyard for the rest of the game. So that doesn't sound great.
Yeah. Totally
so this seems better from for a balance in Commander.
So a popular request in the comments from last time, maybe one of the most popular requests, Melissa, is that after we went through each deck, we would grade the deck. So we'd give the deck a grade based on the commanders and a couple of the cards we talked about. Grading scale A through F. just to refresh everyone out there. A, or I guess A plus theoretically being the best and F minus being the worst. Once again, I don't know how these grade systems work, really. I didn't go to normal school. But looking at the commanders, looking at the theming for what you can call out of the deck, looking at, some of those cards I mentioned off, where is this one sitting for you? A through F grade, do you think?
So if you guys watched last week, I gave the first round of decks an A, basically just for like what they did for Magic and just how unique they were, like because there was never anything else like it. So this is the second iteration of those. So I cannot possibly give it an A because there's like quite a few mistakes going on here with things like the theme is very unclear. There's a lot of cards where the play pattern is just not that great, stuff like that. Wow. So I guess I would give it a C this time.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you, Melissa. So we're going to go through all 5 decks and grade them each. Maybe some will get higher, some will get lower, and then we'll do a final grade at the end. But I agree. I think this is a C for me. I think Derevi ended up being a bit of a challenge with the ranking the command zone rule. There isn't really a strong theme to the deck list to me. So yeah, this one it's not, you could play it out of the box. It'd play fine. There's some cool synergies to be had, but doesn't really feel like a coherent, like a super coherent strategy to me.
Yeah.
Although that wasn't necessarily the goal of some of these, I'm sure. But
yeah, like mostly like the C for me is a lot of the play pattern stuff we talked about, like this breaks the command zone tax. Like that's, that was overall not great for Commander.
Right, and it breaks the command zone tax by making a flash creature that taps when it comes into play, which is like a super rough way to break the command zone tax.
All right. C sounds great then.
Sorry, did you have something else you were going to say there? I just got really worked up about Derevi.
I was going to talk more about the play pattern stuff, but I think we can just move on. I think I was just going to mostly repeat myself, so we can just get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, play pattern rough. Now, when you say play pattern, Melissa, that's something that you coming from play design background, you're big on. You want us to explain what that means for folks out there really quick?
So play pattern is like thinking about like how the cards actually play out in a given game. So I'll give Roon as an example because that's what we were just talking about. So Roon is like, it just kind of sits there and just makes players do unconventional things like hold on to their removal, maybe not attack into something because of the threat of blinking it. Stuff like that. So like that play pattern overall is like not the most fun for the entire table. It's super fun for the Roon player. Like that kind of stuff sounds fun, but like the whole table generally, I think doesn't really have a good time. So that's kind of why I would call that play pattern kind of unhealthy for just what this card does in a typical 4-player game.
Yeah, it's sort of the idea of net fun, right? Like, yeah, maybe I'm having a lot of fun, but I am probably not having more fun than I'm taking away from the 3 other players in the game by doing this really frustrating thing,
Yeah, we always have to think about how the entire table feels, not just the one player. Because like we can make plenty of cards that are fun for the person playing the card, but like our goal is really to make cards that are fun for everybody. So if the opponent just has a miserable time playing against this creature, then it was probably not the best card.
Sorry, Stacks players, but that's just how it's going to be. Derevi, by the way, a card which is used in Stacks builds. So yeah, I love playing a good Stacks deck in competitive constructed. Do not get me wrong, but in Commander, not so much. Okay, let's go on to the next deck here. This is Eternal Bargain. This is the blue, white, black deck. Okay, it's commanders. We're going to kick it off with a big one. It's Oloro was the face commander of this deck. Now, Oloro does something else that breaks the command zone in a pretty interesting way. It gains you 2 life every turn, regardless of if it's in the command zone or on the battlefield. So just gives you 2 life every single turn.
I hate it.
Forever. Yeah. Before I read the rest, I guess I'll read the rest of the card, Melissa, and then you tell me what you think. This is so everyone knows it's 3 white, blue, black. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 2 life. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if it's in the command zone, you gain 2 life. Also, whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card and each opponent loses 1 life. And it's a 4/5. Now, crucially, it's very easy to miss. The first 2 abilities do not work from the command zone. Only the 3rd ability does. So a lot of folks play this card and think that they can also pay 1 to draw a card and make people lose a life from the command zone as well, because it looks like that's what the card does. No, you just gain a life from the command zone. You can't also get a free Howling Mine from the command zone. Melissa, talk me through why this is rough.
Okay, so first I'll talk about the command zone thing. All right, interaction is great. I like to be able to deal with my opponent's things. With this card, you cannot deal with the life gain. It's just literally impossible. You can't interact with the command zone. So this will just sit there and gain 2 life every turn. I mean, gain 2 life is not really the most powerful thing to do in a game of Commander, but just like the idea that there is a thing that you cannot interact with in any way, really, is just not really like the best experience for me. So that's that.
Right. Like if you play this as your commander, like considering, let's just pretend a commander game goes for 10 turns. By having this as your commander, it just says, I start with a free extra 20 life, right? Just like default having this commander. If your game goes on 10 turns, you're just guaranteed to gain 20 life over the course of the game, which is ridiculous.
It is kind of ridiculous. Like it's not even like you're casting this at any meaningful time in the game. It's a 6 mana card. So you're like, you don't even have to really even cast this. Like, let's say that you built some kind of life gain rewards deck. You just have this repeatable way to gain life, and your opponent can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing too where, yeah, life gain isn't the strongest thing to do in Commander, but the fact that it's just a free resource you get every single turn for the rest of the game. And of course, life is the resource, which we're very careful about because it makes the games take longer, right? We also try to be very conscious of game time, and adding an extra 20 life into the game for every game you play with this card just makes the games take longer and can drag on too, which is not necessarily the most fun.
All right, so a couple things. All right, let's see. The first is, back then, I would guess that the team had a lot less data about Commander games. Like they had no idea how long a typical game of Commander would take. So they didn't really have any regard to like, hey, if we make this card, games are going to take a lot longer, because they didn't know if that was even a problem, right? They just thought, hey, this is a cool ability. Now you can't die to aggro. You know, that sounds great. But other than that ability from the command zone, if let's say that card is just removed from, like that ability is just removed from the card, I think this card is actually very fun. Like just sweet incentives and rewards. Like if you gain life, you get to draw cards. How cool is that? That sounds awesome. I would also cost it less too.
Right. So just kind of delete the last ability from this card. You might have something more reasonable. The problem is just the command zone thing here. And once again, like Derevi, it breaks the rules of Commander. It's a theme we're going to see running through all these guys, where Derevi lets you cheat its command tax into play. This says, don't even bother cheating the command tax. I'm just going to give you my thing every single turn. So that's pretty wild.
So is that the common theme with these decks? They just break Commander rules in some way?
In some fashion. So we'll get to the other commanders in a second. So originally I looked it up, and originally all 5 of the commanders were going to be like Oloro, where they had some kind of outside the game ability, which we did not end up doing, of course. And they ended up all being things that play around with Commander in some sense. So we'll get to what the other ones are. And the other ones are maybe a little less innocuous. I don't know, a little less innocuous. I'm not sure what the White Raiders say that is. But anyway, they're more innocuous, we'll say, than than Oloro is. And we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so you've seen a life gain commander here. So what would you expect the backup commander in your life gain deck to do? Like another backup commander, maybe? You know, something like that. Well,
I don't know. Like it looks like this deck's theme is life gain, so I would probably expect it to also be something life gainy.
Well, yeah, interesting. Let's pull up Sidri, Galvanic Genius, who is
white, blue, black
for a 2/2 Human Artificer. Blue, target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness each equal to its mana cost till end of turn. White, black, target artifact creature gains death touch and lifelink until end of turn. So you get a little bit of life. I'm not going to give it dock it fully. You do gain lifelink on the artifact creature there, but definitely like a sharp turn there from life gain matters commander to I'm going to animate your artifacts commander.
That's funny. This is just so different from what we would make these days in commander decks. Like this just has nothing to do with the first creature at all. That's so funny to me. All right, but as for the card, let's see. You can make non-creature artifacts into artifact creatures, including your opponents. So you can just like kill all of their artifact lands or other 0 cost, kill their mana crypt, just get that out of here.
Oh, that's so rude, Melissa. This is why we have you on the team to come up with stuff like this. Oh my gosh. That gives me big flashbacks to like Kamal, Fist of Krosa plus Goblin Sharpshooter, right? That is like totally brutal.
All right, now imagine if you have a liquimetal coating in play. You just get to kill all their stuff.
Kill all their lands. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, all their lands. Yeah.
Yeah, these days I think would make that target non-creature artifact you control. That's like a pretty important differentiator here.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can do this ability for your opponent's stuff, but like probably cost it more. So the blowing up lands thing is not as easy. Like, but for 1 blue mana, this looks a little bit too easy to do for targeting opponent's stuff.
Now, in the vein of breaking the rules of Commander, I actually looked it up, and I think part of the reason why it might have ended up here is this card had a bit of a troubled history. There were a lot of things that were tried for it and some that didn't ultimately work. The big one being is basically they had a line of text on this that said Commander damage takes 30 damage to kill you instead of 21 that they didn't ultimately use, which is definitely like very, very strange and unusual. We even haven't made a card that says that yet. I don't know if people would like that. If you would, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I'll try and sneak it into an upcoming set somewhere. But that was kind of the rule this thing was trying to break originally. Didn't end up happening, so they scrapped it, came up with this instead. Any thoughts on this card power level wise or for its function in the deck?
Function in the deck, I mean, I haven't looked at the deck, but like, having only seen the first commander, it just looked like super weird and out of place to me. As for the card, I mean, we already talked about the targeting your opponent's stuff thing, but like, ignoring that, the card looks pretty cool. It looks like a fun thing to build around. The white-black ability, I guess, looks a bit miscosted. Like 2 mana to just give some keywords is just not the most powerful or exciting ability. So I wish that was just a little bit cooler. But like, it's a pretty unique effect. It's turning artifacts into creatures for that cheap of a cost. Like you can do something really cool with this.
So then in the artifact vein, the backup commander is Sharoom from Shards of Alara. So you might remember this one. This is actually quite a powerful commander that was, I almost don't see it played anymore because it's kind of just been like rule zeroed out of the conversation for a lot of people. Like, yeah, we've seen your infinite combo Sharoom deck before. We're good. But Sharoom, of course, is a 6-mana Sphinx that flies. And when it comes into play, you get to return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. The combo there, of course, you can do with it is if you have Sculpting Steel or something like that's a clone. You bring back Sculpting Steel, it copies Sharoom, who is an artifact. Sharoom dies, goes to the graveyard, you bring Sharoom back, and so on and so forth, getting infinite ETB triggers. So it's interesting that both Sidri and Sharoom point to an artifact strategy, and then Oloro says, actually, no, do this life gain thing.
Yeah, that is super weird. Like, I would have just made the face commander the other guy, right? Like, it just seems just a little bit out of place. I think the face commander, Oloro, is like overall the cooler card, like because life in cards is just kind of fun, but just given the other stuff in the deck, I'm looking through the list and there's a lot of artifact synergy in here, so very bizarre.
Right, there's cards like Sharding Sphinx and Sphinx of the Steel Wind for artifacts, but then you also have some life gain matter stuff. You've got Johnny's Pride Mate, Divinity of Pride, Sarah Avatar as well. So it's almost like, and this is one thing we do talk about sometimes in design. We don't want you to buy your deck and have it feel like it's complete, right? We want you to be able to go out and explore other directions. And one way that you can make that happen is by putting kind of 2 or 3 themes in the same deck and then allowing people to go and like pick the one they like the most, cut the cards that don't fit the theme, and then upgrade it with the other aspects. So, hey, you like the life gain theme, cut all these artifact matters cards and put life gain in here. Oh, you like the artifact theme, cut all these life gain matters cards and put artifact matters in here. So that is a way you could go down, and I think does match some of the older philosophy maybe a little bit better than some of the newer philosophy.
Yeah, for sure.
Unique new cards I'll mention here that show up in just this deck. We've got Serene Master, Act of Authority, Order of Succession, Tempt with Immortality, Toxic Deluge, which is quite a card. That one showed up quite a bit eventually. And Tidal Force. We talked a bit last week about the Force cycle with 2 more Verdant Forces showing up in Commander 2011. Billy finished the cycle here with Tidal Force, which is they're all modeled after Verdant Force as 8-mana creatures. Tidal Force, can you guess what the blue one does, Melissa?
Oh, well, you already like kind of messed up by asking me because I have the deck list right in front of me and I'm looking at it right now. So
what does it do for us, Melissa?
Okay, so at the beginning of each upkeep, you may tap or untap target permanent.
Right,
That's
so it twiddles something every turn.
Yeah,
which is okay, I guess.
I am not very excited by this, I must say.
Interestingly, I looked it up, and originally it was draw a card every turn. But
that's much different.
Yeah, but then they're like, it looked bad compared to Consecrated Sphinx. So they're like, we just don't want to make a worse Consecrated Sphinx. So we're going to, instead of drawing a card, make it tapping and untapping a permanent, which is something.
That logic is kind of funny.
It is different. It's even funnier to me because if you look at Baleful Force, which we'll get to in a deck here in a second, that's the black one. Baleful Force ended up at lose a life and draw a card for the Force trigger, which is having the same problem, except doubling down on it because you have to lose the life. But I looked that one up too, and Baleful Force originally was proliferate every turn, but that had to be cut for other reasons. So I think as like a late minute kind of move, they put the draw card on the black one. The blue one was tapping and untapping something. So, not maybe those powerful suite of abilities it could have had eventually, but still cool to kind of finish out the cycle, I guess. Other card, Toxic Deluge, we mentioned a moment ago. Have you played with this one in Legacy? You mentioned True-Name Nemesis, but this was a card that showed a bit too, right?
So I've never actually cast a Toxic Deluge in Legacy. I have played plenty of them in Cube, but not Legacy. I was more of a Stoneforge Mystic player back then. But yeah, like I've definitely seen this card in play a lot, either in Cube or Legacy.
Yeah, the original version would have made a big difference. The original version was XB, pay X life, everything is -X, so you couldn't just like pay 3 mana and give everything -8 or whatever. So that was a really important tweak that was made kind of late in design to allow it to go bigger. Like that, the other card, I don't think it would have been playable really. So
yeah, well, I mean, it kind of depends. Was this card meant for to see play in Legacy? If so, then yeah, the other card you mentioned would not have made it. But like the cheaper mana cost certainly is strong enough for Legacy. Do you know if like the designers wanted to make Legacy cards in this product?
Yeah, so coming off of the first series, there was still some inkling of like, yeah, we can make some Legacy cards. And once again, we'll talk to True-Name Nemesis and some other stuff when we get there in a little bit. But that's a philosophy that we've definitely dropped over time. Now Commander decks just stand on their own. We don't have to make Legacy cards in them. But coming off the first series, Scavenging Ooze and Flusterstorm did pretty well. So there was the thought of maybe we should try some Legacy shots. And I don't know for sure if Toxic Deluge was one of those shots or not, but definitely it looks like it, right? 3 mana, sweep the board, pay some life. Definitely in the range of a Legacy card.
Yeah, there are not too many 3 mana sweepers in Magic that are just kind of can kill everything, like, with a cost, of course, of the life payment. But like usually 3 mana sweepers are a lot more restrictive, like a Pyroclasm variant, Infest, that kind of thing. But straight up killing everything like that is not something that you usually see on a 3 mana card.
Right, especially given it gets run indestructible and all kinds of stuff that way.
And right, so True-Name Nemesis.
And True-Name Nemesis, which ironically ended up being very important, as we'll get to in a little bit. I remember some folks sideboarded Nausea, and then they eventually moved into Toxic Deluge. So we talked about the commanders, we talked about some of the reprints, we talked about the themes. Grade this deck for me, Melissa. Eternal Bargain, Blue, White, Black, Oloro, Sidri. How are we looking for this one?
I feel like this grade is maybe a little lower than the first one because there's just a few things that I don't really like. The theming is just way all over the place, more all over the place than the other deck, I think. And I'm really not a big fan of this whole you gain 2 life every upkeep and the opponent can't do anything about it. But I don't want to be too harsh here. So I would probably do like C- here.
C-. I think that's a fair grade. To me, the deck theme here is actually, I find the deck theme here a little more coherent in a sense than the first theme, where like at least this one has 2 very clear parts. It's got like life gain and artifacts. And the first deck had like tapping, untapping, and blinking, which I guess is like, I mean, it's also kind of 2 themes, but there's like way less exciting themes. So like maybe this is about equivocal, maybe a little bit more on that front. But for Oloro alone, I feel like I need to dock this a little bit from what the previous one was. I think I'd go, in that space, like either D+, C-, something like that, I think, for this deck.
More to your point on the theme, though, like this deck looks a lot more like an artifact deck than a life gain deck. So had they swapped the commanders, I would have given this a higher grade.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Also, there's like some cards that look so hard to cast, like Divinity of Pride, the 5 white-black hybrid card.
Yep.
In your 3-color
deck. Yeah.
That's like that's some ambition right there. Okay, moving along to, and this is a big one. This is a name that will resonate throughout Commander history. A lot of folks know this deck by name. It's one of the few I actually do know by name. That is Mind Seize. This is the blue, white, black, red deck. And yes, this is the one where True-Name Nemesis appeared. And this has some cool commander zone at the front face. It's the front of the box is Jeleva. Jeleva is the front face of on this card on this commander deck. If you don't know what Jeleva does, it is a 4 mana commander. It's a 1/3 vampire wizard, 1 blue, red, black. It's got flying. When Jeleva, Nephalia's Scourge, enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Jeleva. And whenever Jeleva attacks, you can cast an instant or sorcery spell from among cards exiled with Jeleva without paying its mana cost. So this does a brand new thing for Commander, but one that to me anyway is a lot more reasonable, of scaling off of the mana cost of your commander, which is really, this is actually pretty cool. And we've used this trick a number of times because commanders have commander attacks, so therefore the cost goes up over time. So early game, it's a small effect. Late game, it's a larger effect. This one is still casting stuff for free. So I don't know, Melissa, what do you think about this one? Jeleva, Nephalia's Scourge. Give me the rundown.
Yeah, I actually really like this card. I like scaling with the amount of mana you pay for commander tax because honestly, sometimes it just kind of feels bad to play your, 3 mana commander for 15 mana way late in the game, and you don't really want to do that. But sometimes you feel like you have to, especially if your deck is built around the commander and you really need it in play. But like using this text, getting a reward for the amount of mana you spent on it is just a way to like mitigate that feel bad. So I think that's just a really cool use of the commander design. And the attack trigger ties in really well with the first ability. Looks really fun. You have to put the creature at risk to get your reward, which can be really satisfying. Like you have to attack, so you have to at least wait a turn. And if you attack, anything could happen. It might get blocked. But like you have a lot of options in what you can do when you attack with it, which looks kind of sweet. And it's only once per turn, so it's not overpowered.
I especially find that commanders you have to wait a turn to attack with are usually pretty fair, or can a lot of the times be fair, because if your opponent has a removal spell, it just turns off what this does entirely, right? So even though it's promising you a big reward, casting a free spell, it still can just be turned off by any removal spell, unless you have like Lightning Greaves or something, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, and also like waiting an entire turn cycle for this to attack is so much more time than one-on-one, right? You have to wait for 3 other people to take their turns. Like anything could happen.
Right, 2 more players who can have their removal spell.
Yeah,
right?
Or like they could play flying blockers. Like you just don't know what's going to happen. But like in 1v1, you're more likely to like predict what's going to happen, but not in a 4-player game.
So that's the front-facing commander. It works with instant and sorceries. The backup commander is one that you may know called Nekusar. Nekusar the Mind Razor. If you don't know this one, it's 2 blue, red, black for a 2/4 zombie wizard. It's Howling Mine, so every draw step players draw an extra card. Hooray! Everyone loves Howling Mine, right? What's not to love? Well, don't worry. We'll know. It's just a little drawback. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekusar deals 1 damage to that player. So it's Howling Mine for everybody, including yourself. But if you draw cards, you take a damage. This card's pretty infamous in Commander. There's a lot of like decks that use a lot of wheels with it, or force fruition to make your opponent take a lot of damage. Thoughts on Nekusar the Mind Razor?
Well, honestly, it kind of reads weak and like a little bit risky to play because like you don't get to draw a card until like 3 other people have drawn a card, right? So in that regard, it's kind of like my opponents are just getting all this value and all I have is this 2/4 that's dealing them 1 damage in a game where players have 40 life. So this card kind of strikes me as like not something that I want to put in my commander deck as a commander, just like overall a little bit too weak. But I like the idea of like, hey, let's do a Howling Mine, but also like let's also punish them for drawing cards, like that's pretty cool. And just like commander games with more card flow are generally a little bit more fun. Just not really a big fan of the power level here where I don't get my card until everybody else gets theirs.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think for a lot of commander players, they see Nekusar and they like start trembling a little bit because they know it's about to come. It's a very strong commander historically, but it is true that it's only really strong when you pair it with like Wheel of Fortunes and draw 7 effects, right? When you're casting one of these and dinging your opponent for 7 every turn, it's not quite as strong when it's just like, okay, take 2 damage every turn and you all get an extra card, right? Because a lot of times in Commander, you'll happily make the trade of the extra card for a couple points of damage.
Yeah, definitely. Like also like to your point about the players are scared because of all these wheels. I don't know. The opponents are drawing 7 cards, so that sounds like incredibly risky to just give all of my opponents all these cards. Like, yes, they are taking damage, but also they're probably going to draw ways to kill me. So I don't know. 5 mana commander that does this, it just doesn't strike me as the most powerful thing.
I really like that it inspires a new kind of deck too, right? There wasn't really like a kind of like wheel or Howling Mine centric deck that existed before Nekusar, and now you can build it, which is pretty fun. I'll also note that I think in opposition to the last 2 commander decks we saw, this one actually does kind of work as a backup commander for this deck. Like this is very much more in vein of the kind of thing we would do now, where the front-facing commander very much says, hey, this is your theme, this is what you do. And then the backup commander, it doesn't necessarily have to call out the thing you're doing, but it still works with it. And if you're playing an instant or sorcery heavy deck, well, you're probably going to want a bunch of extra card flow to find those cantrips or, to find the spells you need to trigger your stuff like Gutter Sniper, what have you. So any thoughts on that, Melissa?
Yeah, like it just looks like the theme of the deck is just draw extra cards and play extra stuff. Like the front-facing commander allows you to play extra spells. The other commander allows you to draw extra cards. The themes are not very loud, but it's just telling you draw and play extra cards. So I guess it does tie in some way, even though it's just not very clear. Like it's not very loud.
Right. And you've got some instant sorcery matters. You've got Gutter Snipe, Arcane Melee, Augur of Bolas, which Augur of Bolas sounds like a rough one in a commander deck. I'm going to be honest. 2 mana, 1/3 that probably just whiffs most of the time. But regardless, I mean, it's a noble attempt. Players do like Augur of Bolas. So, it's some cool stuff going on here. The backup commander, the reprint commander for this deck is Thraxamundar, one of my favorite card names in all of Magic. Not a lot here to do with the other themes of the deck, but hey, Thraxamundar is pretty cool. So I guess you got that going for you.
Yeah, let's see what this does. I remember this card from Draft.
Yeah, this card is a sweet card from Shards of Alara. If you don't know what Thraxamundar does, besides sounding like a metal name, it's 4 blue-black-red for a 6/6 zombie assassin. So the old 6/6 assassin there. It's got haste. When it attacks, your defending player has to sacrifice a creature. And whenever a player sacrifices a creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So it grows with time, hits you, makes you sack a thing. This was like a fun old school commander. You don't see it as much these days, but back in the day, you plop down your blue, black, red commander deck. Maybe this helms it. That's reasonable.
Yeah, this card is not very powerful by today's standards. What I remember most about it is it was in one of the most recent secret lairs, like the metal secret lair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually bought that secret lair because I thought that art was super cool.
Yeah, Thraxamundar, it sounds metal. I remember when the set first came out, a lot of folks thought it sounded metal. And I think Justin Treadway, like even talked about making shirts that said Thraxamundar on them. So really glad we got to go the full way with the metal secret lair drop there.
That's funny because there is a shirt that says Thraxamundar that we made.
Oh, did we make one too? That's awesome.
Yes,
that's really cool.
I own the shirt. Maybe I'll wear it in the next episode.
Yeah, that'd be. I thought that was Justin's shirt, but who knows?
No, it was an official Wizard shirt.
That's amazing. It
came out
cool.
with it has the secret lair art.
Oh, awesome. There you go. There we go. Thraxamundar. Perfect. So other unique new cards that showed up in this deck. True-Name Nemesis, which hold in there. We'll get there in a little bit. Baleful Force, Eye of Doom, Illusionist Gambit, Tempt with Reflections, and Price of Knowledge. A fun thing I just wanted to mention is that sometimes we'll write flavor text for cards, but then ultimately with the way it's templated, there isn't room for flavor text. But we often bank the flavor text just in case we ever, reprint it with shorter text or, who knows what. And Price of Knowledge, which is a card that I had forgotten about, did have flavor text that was cut. I just wanted to read it off here because I thought it was kind of a cool Easter egg. The flavor text was going to be Nekusar inscribed each page with the blood of those who had plotted to kill him, their former king. So fun little backstory there about Nekusar. Not canon, of course. It did not actually show up on a Magic card, but fun little fact for you there. So we talked about some of the reprints. We talked about the front-facing commanders. What do you give this deck, Melissa? A through F. Where are you going for mine, Suze?
Honestly, I would give this a little bit higher than the other two. Mostly because, it doesn't have any rule-breaking things that offends me. So that's a really big plus in my mind. The theme is not super loud, but, I can understand what it is. It looks like you're playing instants and sorceries and drawing cards. So, kind of classic, what does Grixis do? Yeah, it plays instants and sorceries and draws cards and kills stuff. So the theme is there for me. But we haven't talked about any of the problematic cards in the deck yet. So should I wait to give the grade or just give the grade based on what we talked about?
Let's just set aside. I think True-Name Nemesis is its own little island. We'll get to that later. Let's just set that one on the side. Absent True-Name Nemesis, what do you give? What do you give this one?
All right, yeah. So I really dock the grade based on the rule breaking of commanders, and since this didn't do that, I'm going to actually give it a little bit higher. So let's go with B here.
Yeah,
I could see B minus too.
I think this is a solid B for me. Jaleva and Nekusar are both sweet commanders that have stood the test of time. It's got a loose theme, but drawing cards, playing spells, it works out for me. Feels like a B. I think you can even talk about B plus on this one. I
have no idea the difference between B plus, B, and B minus, so it's really hard to say.
We get to make it up, Melissa. We make it up as we go along. Well, I love by the end of the show, we'll have doing all the decks. We'll have like a very good rubric of like how everything fits in. And right now we're just like, I don't know, B, I guess. And then 4 episodes from now, we're gonna be like, crap, we give that deck a B. So we got to give this one a C or something like that. Anyway, moving on to the next deck, we've got Power Hungry, which is a great name for this deck. It's black, red, and green. And the front-facing commander is a lot of folks' favorite Jund Dragon, Prossh.
Oh, I know Prossh. I know Prossh very well, actually.
All right, Melissa, what is Prossh? You read it off for us here.
All right. Yeah. So Prossh is a sacrifice commander, and he makes kobold. So he is a 6 mana, 3 BRG, 5/5 flying. When you cast Prossh, create X01 red kobold creature tokens named Kobolds of Keep. Oh wow, old school.
Yeah.
Where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Prossh, and then you can sacrifice another creature to give Prossh +1/+0 until end of turn.
All right. Thoughts on Prossh, Melissa?
Thoughts on Prossh. So it's powerful. I've actually played a commander deck with him as the commander that was very good at killing the table. So I like the idea of making kobolds based on how much mana you spent to cast him. Like I said with the last deck, it's a nice way to use the extra mana you spent when this dies and you recast this from the command zone. So I like that. But that said, this makes way too many kobolds. Like, it already makes 6 the first time you play it, and that's just a lot. Like, that just threatens. So if you just look at just this card individually, that threatens Prossh to attack for 11 on the following turn, which is quite the chunk of damage. But outside of like this card individually, like 6 mana for 7 creatures is just a lot of creatures. And given the sacrifice outlets and rewards that you can do with this, it's, in my opinion, a little bit too powerful.
Yeah, to me, Prossh is a sweet card that just has a wrong rate. Like, I love scaling with command tax. I think that's really fun. I love a dragon that comes with kobolds. That's like a really cool idea. The problem is just, like you said, 6 mana for this huge dragon plus 6/01s on the ground that can block, be sacrificed, pumped up with anthem style stuff. It's just a ton. And then you cast it your second time, you get 8 more kobolds, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then you have any way to grant this thing haste, which is not that hard to do in black, red, green, not to mention you've got lightning greaves as well. But you give this thing haste and you're going to crunch in, right away for 11 points of damage on the first attack, which is, already putting them into commander death range, commander damage death range. I mean, this thing is powerful. And I think it's a totally sweet card, just probably a little too strong.
Yeah. And another thing about this card. So the free sack outlet, like the output is whatever, like giving your commander +1/+0 it's fine. It's not that powerful, but like the actual power is just in the free sack outlet. So if you have something on the board that says whenever another creature dies, get some effect like damage or something, you can just kind of go nuts and just sacrifice everything all at once because there's no mana associated here. Like if you have say a Nantuko Husk, you can just kill an opponent. If you have, I don't know, names of cards are escaping me. When something dies, deal damage to each opponent, you can just kill the whole table.
Right.
I remember the deck that I played with Prossh, it had a lot of ways to essentially kill the table when you cast your Prossh. So, and that just was super unfun. I remember I took this deck to it wasn't called Command Fest back then, but it was we were trying out a little commander get together at PAX one year, a few years ago before COVID. And Prossh was the deck that I had. And I thought it was just an innocent, I'm just going to make some kobolds and have some fun. But then I was like, oh no, I can just cast Prossh and kill everybody. What have I done?
Right. I feel like if you just take a Prossh deck and you throw it up in the air and grab 3 cards, you'll just kill someone with a Prossh, right? There's so many ways to just kill people with those tokens. So I'm curious, Melissa, if you were trying to fix this card, tweak it somehow, what would be the first thing you would go to?
So let's say that I want to still have it make kobolds on ETB, but also do some kind of scaling with commander tax. So depending on if this is too many words or not, something like when this ETBs create 2 kobolds plus an additional 2 kobolds for each time this was cast from the command zone, something along those lines. And then once this is making less kobolds overall, the free sack outlet is a lot less oppressive.
That's a really great suggestion, Melissa. Let's go back to 2013 and tell them that sounds awesome, right? Make 2 now and 2 later.
I mean,
That's
this
great.
card does read awesome. Like,
yeah,
this is a very exciting card, and it doesn't look like if you read this card, you're not like, oh my god, I don't want to play against this. Like, it doesn't read like oppressive or anything. It just kind of reads awesome. So good job to them with that.
Yeah, it's a sweet card. It's beloved. It was used in Commander Legends as a reprint. So that's a front-facing commander. The backup commander is the Shattergang Brothers, who what great name. These are 3 goblins that all hang out together, and they fit the theme really well. So Shattergang Brothers, 1 black, red, green for a 3/3 goblin artificer. 2 black, sacrifice a creature. Well, each other player sacrifices a creature, and then it's the same exact deal for 2R, sacrifice an artifact. Each other player sacrifices an artifact. 2G, sack an enchantment. Each other player sacrifices an enchantment. So very much like, I'm going to blow something up. I'm going to blow up one of your things, except it hits each other opponent. So in multiplayer especially, it's pretty mean. Thoughts on these Shattergang Brothers?
Yeah, honestly, like, this card looks kind of fun. The abilities are powerful, but they are costed close to correct. Like, if you have a way to make tons of creatures, like, at least you still have to like pay a decent amount of mana to like kill everybody's board, right? So yeah, this looks overall pretty cool. It does a lot. Like, this just covers a lot of bases, right? Like, it kills a lot of different permanent types. So maybe that makes it just, maybe it's just doing a little bit too much actually. But like, the abilities look costed fine and it looks fun to build around.
It is nice that it's they sacrifice instead of you destroy, so they get to pick their weakest one and get rid of it. So it's kind of fair in that sense.
True.
There's some cool build around stuff here. It does tear down a little bit easily, but yeah, I don't mind this card. This is like I don't know if this is always a fun card to have around, but it's like pretty fair as far as like sacrificing-y, attrition-y things can go, right? So if this is what you're in the market for, I would way rather you play this than like a lot of the meaner sacrifice commanders you could be playing.
Yeah, like, I don't know, consider something like a Grave Pact, right? Which I think a lot of players generally hate. That one potentially doesn't cost any mana. Like, if you have something else, some way to kill your stuff, like in combat, you sack something for free. I have a sack outlet, you sack something for free. Like, at least this costs mana. So there's a limit to how much you can use it, which I think makes it pretty reasonable. Yeah,
so this card pretty cool. Also, notably, it ties in well with the front-facing commander. This is the first one of the 2 where it's
wow, they did it.
They actually work together, right? You have a sacrifice Jund deck, your face commander sacrifices, this card sacrifices. So this feels like really nice and tight, which I like a lot. The 3rd commander in the batch, the reprint, is Sequoia Deathkeeper. Do you know this one from Cold Snap? I know there's a person out there in my comments who loves Sequoia. I love Sequoia too.
Yeah, like, I don't know this guy. I don't know Cold Snap very well. Like, that, I mean, no offense to that set. Like, every Magic set has a reason for existing, but this set was just not popular. Like, I remember going to the pre-release and it was like empty.
Yeah. Shout out to the Receivables. Every episode we're probably gonna do this. Patrick Sullivan, Cedric Phillips, they do a great podcast about reviewing Magic sets. Their Cold Snap episode is a great descent into insanity. I highly suggest you watch. Or listen to. Sequoia Deathkeeper, for those who don't know their Cold Snap weird legends, is 2 black, red, green for a 4/3 Orc Shaman. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you get a 3/1 black and red Graveborn creature token with haste on the battlefield. Graveborn, of course, being a reference back to, I think it's Balduvian Dead or something like that from Ice Age block. Anyway, so the important thing here is that it lets you double sacrifice your creatures, right? So you sack one creature, you get a token back for it. You can sack it again. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this card looks actually like really cool, looks fun. Yeah, I like this card. The weird thing, though, is that it actually ties in poorly with Prossh, right? Because Prossh gives you all these kobolds, and this is like non-token creature. So it's like, oh boy, I'm going to sacrifice all my stuff and get these 3/1s. And you read the card and you're like, oh, I can't actually do that.
But it does let you double sacrifice your other creatures, right? So if you want to like give a Prossh +2/+0, you can turn any other non-token creature into that, which is kind of cool. So notably for this deck with me, looking at the reprints and looking at the main cards in the deck, the themes line up pretty well, right? You've got those 3 as commanders, lots of reasonable reprints here. You've got Goblin Bombardment, Tooth and Claw, Fecundity, like a lot of things that you would really expect to be in a Jund sacrifice deck. So this one feels like pretty tight to me.
Yeah, this one is the best we've seen so far. Like, I'm liking a lot of the cards I'm seeing here.
Yeah, if I release a deck that looked like this one today, I don't think I would be like, too mad about it. There's a couple strangies for sure. I think, is this the one that has Fisher Vent in it? One of them has Fisher Vent, and I was like, what is going on with this Fisher Vent here?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't see it.
All right, well then, good work not putting Fisher Vent here. Yeah, this deck looks great. Oh, Blood Rights, that's the weakest card in this deck, I think, but yeah, it's still pretty good. Unique new cards, I'll just run through them really quick. Fell Shepherd, Primal Vigor, Sudden Demise, Tempt with Vengeance, Widespread Panic, which is a card I literally forgot existed, and Ophiomancer. The legendary Ophiomancer shows up here. Cube staple. A lot of folks love the Ophiomancer. A fun fact I looked up, by the way, people have hounded me for ages for the 1/1 black snake token for Ophiomancer, right? You know this one, I'm sure. And we're finally making it, by the way, in Commander Collection Black. We've announced it. Super exciting.
Nice. Awesome.
But originally, the design team actually tried to get around this problem with Ophiomancer by making it a 1/1 black Death Touch Wolf token, which is what the backside of Garruk uses, the transforming Garruk. But they were told by creative, nope, that wolf is weird, don't use that one. So they made it a snake one instead, and then there was no token made for it. So that's the reason why there's no token Ophiomancer fans out there. Anyway, fun fact for you. Melissa, we just looked at the reprints, grade the deck. How are we doing on Power Hungry?
I think actually this deck is an A, because like outside of like some power level issues, like the front facing commander is pretty awesome. The theme ties together. Like all the commanders are actually pretty cool. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Let's go with A.
Yeah, I think it's either A or A minus for me. It's a great looking deck. Prossh, I think, is the one thing that's like, it's a little on the strong side. But, even then, if you grade on a curve, given what they knew about Magic and Commander when they were making it, it's not that far off. So A minus for me. This is a pretty solid deck. All right, let's go to the final deck here. Nature of the Beast, another great deck name. This is the red, white, green deck. And this features Marath of the Wild as the card on the front. Now, Marath of the Wild has a very unique, I guess, title in that it had to have received Day Zero errata.
Oh no!
When the card was released, it had to receive errata right away because we didn't put X can't be 0 on the last ability, which I'll get to in a second why that's important. So Marath of the Wild is green, red, white for a 0/0 elemental beast. It enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So doing the same kind of trick that Prossh used. And it has X, remove X +1/+1 counters from Marath. Choose one. Either put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, or Marath deals X damage to target creature or player, or make an XX green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. So can you see the problem with X without putting X can't be 0 on this card?
Yeah, it looks like if X can be 0, you can just make infinite 0/0 creatures and just get infinite triggers on turn 3.
Yeah, so not the most ideal. We errated that one to 0. Yep. Got that one pretty quickly. Anyway, Marath, Will the Wild. Thoughts on this card, Melissa?
Let's see. Yeah,
it does a lot.
It does a lot. Power level looks reasonable, honestly. Like the the ratio of mana to +1/+1 counters looks good. All right, I got to read these abilities so I can evaluate this thing properly.
Whenever my opponent plays Marath, I'm always like, what ability does that thing have again? What can it do?
Yeah, so you have to like give up, this creature's size for a bunch of different effects, but you have to do spend a mana each time, right? So you can spend 1 to make a bunch of 1/1s every time, kill stuff, and move counters around. Okay, yeah, it looks good. It looks fun. The costs look about right to me. So yeah, this card looks sweet.
Yeah, my thoughts on Marath is that the shape of the design is pretty good. I only have like kind of 2 issues with it. The first is maybe it's just me, but I find it very hard to remember what this card does. It creates a lot of onboard complexity. It's like it can move counters around in combat. It can deal damage in combat. It can make a token in combat. So it's like very hard to know how things are going to shape out when Marath is around. And the second of all, I think it's kind of a bummer that it's usually a lot better to make a bunch of 1/1s than it is to make one big XX, right? It's usually better to like pay 4 mana one time to make 4 1/1s than it is to pay 4 mana to make a 4/4 creature.
That is true.
That's kind of too bad. I think like the shape and the idea here is cool. I think like growing with mana spent to cast it and then using those counters is fun. I just wish maybe it did like one fewer thing or had like a sorcery speed restriction or something like that, I think by today's standards.
Yeah, good point about the, this is very hard to play against. Like, your opponent could do anything. There are so many iterations of what this could do, right? Like, you can pay 1, you can pay 2, you can play 3. You can pay any combination of those. And then once you understand that, now you have to grok that it also does 3 different things. So like,
right.
it's like endless in like the amount of things that this can do. So yeah, maybe if this was a sorcery speed activation, the opponent like wouldn't be so like they wouldn't have to like think so much about it during combat. This is another one of those threat of activation things we talked about earlier. Like if my opponent has this out in a lot of mana, I don't want to think about it. I just won't attack that player. I'll just attack somebody else.
So go and move on to the backup commander. We've got Gahiji, Honored One. This is 2 red, green, white for a 4/4 beast. Whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents or a planeswalker your opponent controls, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Cool. So this rewards you for going wide and also does the fun political thing where it actually incentivizes your opponents to attack each other to get bonuses for it.
Yeah, I like that. It looks like they're just trying to think about all of the things that makes Commander different from 1v1, and this is one of them. It's like, oh, hey, like you can give your bonuses for opponents for attacking other players, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, I think Ahiji's awesome. I think if anything, like the rate on this is just a little bit too weak. I actually wish this saw more play. But the idea of incentivizing your opponents to attack each other is cool. It works well with tokens off the front-facing commander. So if you're going to have a tokens-y style deck, it works great with that by giving +2/+0 to all those tokens as they attack. And yeah, I think this is just a pretty cool card. It also really paves the way for a lot of future cards we would do that reward your opponents for attacking each other, right? We saw it in the first set with Edric, which I guess really started this. But, you know, we've seen this on many, many more designs since then. So I think that's pretty cool. So neat card. Then the reprint commander is Mayal of the Anima. This one also showed up in Shards of Alara block.
Yep, if you don't know remember this card, yep.
Yeah, Mayal of the Anima. It's red, green, white for a 2/3 elf shaman. You can pay 6 mana, 3 red, green, white, and tap it to look at your top 5 cards and put a creature with power 5 or greater from among them on the battlefield. Just cheat it right into play. A cool reprint, I suppose.
Yep. I remember always first picking this card in draft and never having it work. I was like, oh, this rare is sweet. I'm going to just get so many things into play. And it just never worked out because it's just so expensive. And it's hard to put a lot of 5 power things in your draft deck.
Right. Naya, of course, with the 5 power matters theme going on there. I will admit it's a little weird that the first 2 cards care about tokens. And this one says it gets a big creature, but it's okay. Also, when it comes to reprint commanders, I'm not going to dock you too much because the options were just so limited when the set came out. Yeah,
it just looks like they just took a bunch of the shard cards from Shards of Alara, which makes sense because they're shard commanders.
Yeah, and speaking of those shard cards, right? It's got cards like Drum Hunter, Where Ancients Tread, that kind of stuff, which keys off a large power of creatures. Then you've got your ramp, things that make sense, cultivate, whatever. And then, some big creatures like Rampaging Baloths. I also thought it was fun. There was a fun beasts tribal theme here with the Krosan Warchief showing up, which can regenerate your beasts and makes your beasts cost less. So that's kind of cool. There's a bit of discordance here in like power 5 matters and like getting big creatures into play, plus like token makers. But even even the front-facing commander can be a 5/5 pretty easily, and it can move its counters around. So it's not that bad to me.
Yeah. So it's funny that it took me this long to realize this, but like it just looks like that they took themes from Shards of Alara for most of these, right?
Yeah, although, or at least some of the themes, right? Like there wasn't really a life gain theme in Shards of Alara, but they took the artifact theme from Shards of Alara, which makes sense.
Yeah, like you have the power 5 theme from this set, the sacrifice. Sorry, I misspoke. You have the power 5 theme from the Naya theme from Shards of Alara. You have the what else was there? Juntad Sacrifice, Grixis. Nobody has any idea what that did in Shards of Alara, which makes sense because this deck is like just super broad. It just casts spells. What theme did I miss?
The first one, the blinking and tapping, untapping, and Bant.
I don't think Bant did that in Shards of Alara. Bant was just about
Exalted, right?
It was Exalted. Yeah, I remember the Rhino. We call him Pancake Flipper. I don't remember the name. Rock Swarmong. That was it.
Right, 3 mana, 3/4 lifelink.
Yep.
So I mean, it looks like they used the themes where they made sense because you can port those in easily. There's a lot of shard cards that exist. But Exalted, not that strong in Commander, so we'll just do something else for that. And that probably helps with why the Jund decks feel so tight, is because they're able to pick up cards that, they knew could go well with the sacrifice theming here.
Yep.
So So to kind of run through the new cards that were unique to this deck that showed up, we've got Nile Soul Beast from the Ashes, Mystic Barrier, Tempt with Discovery, Witch Hunt, and Spawning Grounds. Melissa, grade this deck.
All right, let's see. Grade this deck. I think it's pretty good overall. You have like tokens, big creature. I guess the theme is tokens and big creatures mostly, right?
Right. Normally an unusual pairing, but it kind of works here.
Yeah. And like power levels of the cards we looked at are overall pretty good. But I don't think I would give it an A because I don't think this beats out the last deck we just talked about. So probably like a B. Yeah,
I'm thinking like B plus for this one.
Yep.
It feels like there's good stuff going on here. The only thing that really bugs me is Marath is like onboard complex. But other than that, it's fine. None of the cards are like, super strong, but none of them are like really offensive either. So, all right, cool. We made it through all 5 decks, a range of grades there. Now let's talk about a few cycles because there's a couple fun cycles here to chat about. First up, cycles is we did a cycle of curses. So coming hot off the heels of Innistrad, we did some commander-themed curses in these decks. There were 5 of them. They were split across the decks with a few in each deck. Now, have you looked at these already, or do you want me to quiz you on what they do?
I know what some of them do because these are commonly reprinted in commander products that we do now. So I'm familiar with some of them.
You might be thinking of the Commander 2017 curse cycle and not these ones. These were a little bit different. So I'll just read them off here. You've got Curse of the Forsaken, which enchants a player. And if the way all these work is you enchant a player, and then when people attack that player, good things happen to the attacking player, right? So it gives you a bonus for attacking your opponents. Presumably, I put it on Melissa and then encourage my opponents to attack her. So Curse of the Forsaken is a 2 and a white for an enchant player. You put it on your opponent. Whenever a creature you control attacks that player, you gain 1 life. That's kind of a sad one, I think.
Yeah.
You've got Curse of Inertia. You put it on a player. When you attack that player, you get to tap or untap a permanent. You've got Curse of Shallow Graves. You put that on a player. When you attack them, you get a bonus 2/2 zombie. You've got Curse of Chaos. When you attack the player it's on, you get to rummage. That means you discard a card and then draw a card. And then maybe the most well-known one, I'd say the one that probably hit the most, is Curse of Predation, which whenever a creature deals combat damage to an opponent, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. And notably, by the way, fun fact, this was the first ever green curse. So kind of breaking that here in. There's a fun video we did here in Good Morning Magic a couple weeks ago about curses. So cool stuff there. Melissa, grade these curses. What do you think about the cycle?
All right. Well, sorry, curses, but you are not getting a good grade from me. So I think overall, I think the cycle is very weak. Like the effects are not really incentivizing the players to attack the cursed player. Like game life, who cares? For example. Also, the black curse specifically, I think is not very fun. Like you put this on somebody and that player just gets bombarded with attackers for the rest of the game while everybody else gets zombies. And the cursed player does not get a zombie. They can't attack themselves. They can't even benefit from this. So everybody gets zombies except them. And that just sounds like really unfun. So overall, I like that they were going for hey, let's encourage you to attack. Let's encourage everybody to attack one person. I like the idea. I thought the execution was not very good. Is it an F though? F is so harsh. I guess F is a little bit too harsh because like you said, the green one actually does look pretty fun. So it can't be a pure F. So it's probably a D. What do you think?
Yeah, this curse cycle is rough for me. So first of all, I'd say its heart is in the right place, right? The idea of you do a cool political multiplayer thing, you encourage folks to not attack you. That's pretty cool. I think that there's some fun stuff there. The problem with the curses, and we tried them here, and then when we get to Commander 2017, we tried them again there. And I think we've tried them twice and kind of learned, let's not do this style of curse anymore. Because what really happens is it encourages players to pile on one player, which is generally not very fun. And it's kind of a thing where if you put one of these curses on someone early, you just know you're going to get attacked the rest of the game until this, because you usually can't kill off a curse, and then it's just going to stick around forever and be really frustrating. Additionally, these curses are all over the place power level wise. Curse of Predation is pretty strong, but the others are just so weak, like Rummage, tap or untap, 1 life. So I think their heart's in the right place here. So I'm going to give it an all right grade. But in terms of how these played out, I think they ended up both weak and not that much fun. And then in 2017, when we made them stronger, I think we learned, oh crap, we made them good and they were still not very fun. So that was also a challenge. I'm going to give these like a D+. It's like, the heart's in the right place on them, but not the most fun thing to play around with.
All right. I have a story about one of these curses real quick before we move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you guys may or may not know, I work on Commander now. So one of my first Commander playtests as a playtester focusing on balance, which was probably around 2019 or so is when I started doing this. No, 2020, because it was the start of COVID. Anyway, so I remember a player played the Curse of Shallow Graves on me on turn 3. And I was like, all right, let's see what this does. And I read the card. I'm like, okay, let's see how this pans out. And then for the rest of the game, everybody attacked me. And I was taking all this damage, and everybody was getting zombies. So even if I like tried to kill their stuff or get blockers or whatever, they were still like so incentivized to attack me and get zombies. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? This card is the worst. We cannot make this card. And then the other playtester informs me, actually, that card was made in 2013. I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. So I recommended for the card to be removed for the deck and explained what my experience was. And this was a while ago, so I don't know if the card was actually removed from the deck. It probably was, but like I couldn't believe this was a card. I just assumed that it was like not a real card.
There's always this fun moment when someone gives me feedback on a card that already exists. I always love that moment of like, change your card. Sorry, not my card to change. Go talk to people years ago about this. I had this happen with a card recently. Someone actually left like developer comments on a card in my set that was a reprint. I can't say what card it is. It would give too much away, but it was pretty funny. Okay, next cycle. This is, so the curses were like the unnamed uncommon cycle that showed up in multiple decks. This next cycle showed up 1 per deck. This is the tempting offer cycle. And for those who don't know how tempting offer cards works, there's a lot of words on them. They end up very, very wordy. But the gist is this. You do something. So they're all sorceries. I play them. They do a thing for me. Then each other player can also do the thing. And for each other player that does, you get to do the thing again. So for example, on Tempt with Glory, it's 5 dub. You put a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures. Then each other player can put a +1/+1 counter on all of their creatures. And for each player that does, I put another +1/+1 counter on all my creatures. So it has a base effect. And then if Melissa and maybe Mark opt in, I get 2 more +1/+1 counters to all my creatures. So to kind of run through the cycle, Tempt with Glory, as I just described, counters to your team. Tempt with Reflections is 3U, create a token that's a copy of target creature, and then you get another for everyone who opts into it. Tempt with Immortality is 4B for a Zombify. You get to bring a creature back from your graveyard to the battlefield. You get another for everyone who opted into it. Tempt with Vengeance, XR, make X 1/1s, and then you get additional X 1/1s for every other player who opts into it. And then they have haste, by the way. And then Tempt with Discovery, which is 3G, get any land, and each other player can get a land. For each that does, you get a land too. Melissa, talk me through your thoughts on tempting offer cards.
Okay, so I actually like these. I think this is a really good idea. Generally, symmetrical effects are very weak to play in any game, in multiplayer and one-on-one, because the caster has to spend a card and mana, and both players get the same thing, and that's just it's not worth it. That's just kind of weak. But these are different in that, like, the caster is spending the card, but they have the potential to get 4 things, right? If everybody else opts into it. And if nobody opts into it, at least you're getting something. I guess like the worst case scenario is one person opts in, but then you still get 2 of the thing. So you're still getting more value the more people who opt into it. So like I overall like these as symmetrical cards that actually work. They're actually worth playing.
Whenever someone plays one of these cards, I'm always like, all right, let's just all agree right now to not do this. And I try as hard as I can to be like, all right, let's all do this. And then inevitably someone will do it. And when someone is in, you're all in, right? So like whenever someone plays a Tempt with Discover, I'm just like, don't do it. They're going to get like Dark Depths and Thespian Stage. You don't want that to happen. And then someone says yes. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll get a land too, So.
Yeah, I guess like negative things about the cycle is since ultimately the choice is up to your opponent, it is not likely to work out the way that you want it to work out, right? Like, so like in your example about Tempt with Discovery, if you need to get specific lands. It's really on your opponent to make that choice for you of if you're getting that specific land. So like that's always that's not the most fun thing. Let's see, as for other individual cards, like the black one looks like pretty powerful. Like you might get 4 things. Even if they get 1, they're still going up a lot of cards. The red one looks like you can just kill somebody, right? It's like, hey, everybody, would you like 5 tokens? Oh, everybody wants 5 tokens? All right, well, I'll get 20 tokens, right? And I'll kill that person. So like that, I don't know, that just, if the table all agrees to make tokens and one person dies because like the person who cast this made more tokens and was able to kill somebody, that doesn't seem very fun. But anyway, outside of the executions of all these, like I like the idea of, hey, it's symmetrical, but I get more stuff. So pretty cool overall.
You know, I'll admit, I went into this section expecting to be like, yeah, these are kind of bad, not really into it. But the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, yeah, this mechanic could work. We could do more of these. Like, they're hard to design and hard to get right. I think you see that in the designs here. Like, Tempt with Glory is just so weak. 6 mana put a counter on your team. If people just opt out, you paid 6 mana for like Bosri's
for
plus
one counter.
Counters.
Yeah.
It's pretty weak.
Yeah, this one does look like the weakest one.
Or like Tempt with Vengeance, I think is like a huge challenge of like, even just RX make X1/1s in like a sacrifice deck is already very strong. And then your opponents opt in, you're like, great, draw a million cards with my fecundity or whatever, you know? So I think like the power level on these cards might be a little wrong. I think the most interesting one to me is like the Tempt with Immortality that zombifies and the Tempt with Reflections that clones a creature. Because those are like pretty interesting choices and can be different from game to game, depending on what creatures are around.
I agree.
Yeah, these are like kind of interesting. Maybe I'm inspired to go try one out now. I will say one thing that I will dock these on that is a big deal to me is they are mouthfuls to read. Like when you're reading the card, there's a lot there. It's like you also feel like you're just like your brain's like, what? Because you have to read the same thing 3 times. You have to read what it does, then that your opponent gets the thing too, then you get the thing again. So reading like Tempt with Vengeance, it's like you get X1/1s, then they get X1/1s, then you get X1/1s, and you're like, what's going on in my head right now? Did I just misread this card? You know, am I like crossing my eyes? So that's a little weird. So it's not my favorite mechanic, but it's a lot better than Join Forces from last week. I think that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what do you think? Grade this one from me, Melissa.
All right. So positive points for the good execution of a symmetrical effect. Some of the designs are really cool. I do agree that the weak one, the white one is like not really worth the card at all. So just poor execution of the white one. And like, the templating is just like, these are just really hard to understand on a first read. So let's see. So I said a lot more negative things than positive, I suppose. So probably like in the C area is what I would give this.
Yeah, I was coming in and expecting to give this a D, but I'm going to give it like a C+. Like, it's got some negatives, but it's not outside the range of possibility. On the storm scale, if we were doing that, I'd give this like on the commander storm scale or something. I'd give it like a higher number, but not an impossible number, like a 6 or something like that, 6 or 7. I think
we can do these way better, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
I think we can find something cooler to do on the white one. I think white has improved design space over the years enough where we can find something a little bit better than this.
That's definitely true. All right, well, I'm just going to kind of go to where everyone wants us to go to here. So I had a couple more cycles down, but there's an uncommon multi-deck cycle of Darksteel Mutation, Diviner Spirit, Hooded Horror, Terra Ravager, and Restore. Let's forget those, whatever. There's Opal Palace, which is a new land in this deck, but it's kind of forgettable. You play it sometimes you don't. Let's get right to it, Melissa. Let's finally talk about it. Let's talk about True-Name Nemesis. Tell me what the card does.
Okay.
And then tell me about your thoughts on the card. All
right. So True-Name Nemesis is a 1 UU 3/1. As it enters the battlefield, choose a player. True-Name Nemesis has protection from the chosen player. Okay. All right. So first I'd actually kind of want to ask you, since you were in the building for this, was this card designed for Legacy?
Well, I think it depends on who you ask. I went in the dev comments to try and like track it down, and there were some people in the comments, 2 people, Ken Nagel and Dan Emmons, astutely pointed out this is probably a Legacy shot, and I think that was pointed out. I don't know how much it was like looked at in terms of like, yeah, this is going to be a huge deal in Legacy. It's probably like, oh, neat, it'll be a Legacy thing. There was a thing that happened late in design that I do remember, though. There were 3 cards that were pegged as potential problems. There was Restore, Unexpectedly Absent, and True-Name Nemesis. Now, you probably never heard of the other 2, and the reason why is we nerfed the other 2 very, very, very late, and we did not nerf True-Name Nemesis. So Restore, for those who don't know, is 1G, return a land from a graveyard to the battlefield. Doesn't look super strong, doesn't really get a lot of play. Well, originally, very close to the set getting printed, it cost G. So you just be like, crack a fetch land, play Restore, get a fetch land back, or crack a wasteland, pay a green, get wasteland back. And we were really worried about the constructed implications of that card.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Unexpectedly Absent, which was X, it was originally X dub. So the card, if you don't know it now, is X dub dub. Put target creature beneath the X, or the X basically place in their library. It's a sorcery. Originally it was X dub, and X couldn't be 0. So you could just pay, it was a lot easier basically to just put stuff back into their deck. And you could pay more for it very easily. So we added a late change to both of those. Actually, Restore, if I remember correctly, can get anyone's graveyard too, right? Is that correct?
That is correct. Here. Yeah, I just looked up both cards. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So Restore, it was really like, oh, you cracked a fetch land? Great. Now I've got a fetch land. Or you cracked a wasteland? No, I've got a wasteland. So we really were worried about that one. And then True-Name Nemesis, I think was talked about change, but ultimately it was decided to stay and see how it played out in formats like Legacy. And of course, it's it had quite a history. One other fun fact I'll share before we get over to your comments, Melissa, is believe it or not, this was originally 2 blue, so just 2 and a Uticast. Okay. And it was uncommon. It was in 3 of the different decks.
Oh,
and
wow.
It swapped with
that's very interesting. We should talk about that later, actually. After I talk about my comments.
It swapped with the Titled Diviner, Diviner Spirit, other uncommon. Melissa, talk us through True-Name Nemesis.
Okay, so this card did impact Legacy. Actually, let's back up for a second. For just as a commander design, I think this is a very interesting commander design, and I like it. Just having protection from 1 of 3 players looks pretty cool. However, the rate is costed in such a way where this card is oppressive in 1v1 because this card just does it all in 1v1. Like it's unblockable. It can't be removed with traditional removal. And there's just not a lot you can do against this card in 1v1. There are things, we'll get to that in a second, but this card is costed in such a way where it is just it saw a lot of play in 1v1 Legacy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, since it was only in 1 of the decks, this deck was very hard to find. So if you were a Legacy player, you were having a really hard time finding this card. I remember being a player and I wanted to play these in my Stoneforge Mystic deck in Legacy. And I was going to every Walmart and Target in the area. Well, game stores did not have these. Forget it. They were just sold out immediately. But I was going to all the Walmarts and all the Targets to look for these. And they were just impossible to find. So as a player, I was having a really hard time finding these. And then came to the point where I had a GP to play in, and I really wanted to play True-Name Nemesis. So then also this GP was in Paris. So I was going to take a month-long trip to a bunch of GPs and a Pro Tour with my playtesting team, bunch of French players. So I ended up going to Paris, staying a week with a friend in Paris, playtesting for the Pro Tour, and then at the end of the week, we would go to the GP in Paris and play the Legacy GP. And I could not find a True-Name Nemesis. And it was a really big problem. So I ended up having a friend from back home mail me True-Name Nemesises from Massachusetts to Paris. They overnighted them to me, and it was all registered mail or high priority mail or whatever. And it cost a lot of money. But I finally got these True-Name Nemesis and was able to play them in GP Paris. Great. I actually had a lot of fun in that GP. I ended up losing to the person who won the GP, or at least top 8 of the GP. Yeah, so that was that story. But wow, getting these things were definitely a pain. But I remember getting them they got sent to maybe the hotel. I don't remember where they got sent to, but it was winter of probably 2014 or something. So like right after Christmas, I got this little Christmas card, and it was like, I hope you do awesome at the GP. Here are some True-Name Nemesises. So
yeah, we actually had to like find more ways to get Mind Seize decks into people's hands, right? If with the first series of Commander decks, I think we saw like the cool things this could do in Legacy, like, oh, Scavenging Ooze, Flusterstorm, Noble Causes. In this series of decks, we saw the downside with True-Name Nemesis. First of all, it's just not a very fun card. I think it's just to play against. It's like 3 mana protection from everything. That's kind of sad. The second thing is, I think what we learned from it is that if you're going to make a card targeted toward Legacy, answers can be pretty fun because, like, you know, it's pretty hard for an answer to go wrong. Like Flusterstorm is like a pretty safe card. It's doing a noble goal. But making a really strong threat like True-Name Nemesis is what can cause a format to turn on its head.
Yeah, like Legacy decks definitely had to adapt to this. And like, since there are so few Legacy tournaments in general, it takes a very long time to adapt. Unlike in something like Standard, where there's tournaments and games being played constantly now on Arena, that like Standard metagames adapt very, very quickly. But in Legacy, it's not as quickly. So True-Name Nemesis was like pretty dominating for the first couple of months, probably. It's hard to remember the exact timelines, but this card was like a very dominant force in Legacy until people started figuring out, oh, hey, let's play Liliana of the Veil. Let's play Toxic Deluge. Let's play like, you know, just more answers for this card. But, you know, I just said black cards. What if you were playing white, you know, or you're playing blue? Not every colors has the right answers to this card. Way that other colors do. I
always felt like the cool fix for this card, it kind of works in Commander. I always felt like an interesting fix would be choose one player. It gains protection from each other player, right? So like in a 2-player game, it doesn't work. And then in Commander, it's like, oh, Melissa, you're the only one who can deal with this thing. I'm going to attack these other players. Are you going to like strike a deal with them to help out or whatever? That's like the tweak I would have thought about for this card.
Yep. That's interesting. But like, honestly, like I think this card would be a lot cooler if it was just more expensive and bigger, because then it would not be a Legacy card and just had another cool ability. Because at the end of the day, this is just a vanilla. This is just an unblockable creature. That's not the most exciting thing. Like, I want my Commander cards to do like awesome and fun things. This is just a vanilla creature.
Right. Even at like 5 mana, right? It would have kept it out of Legacy and probably been cooler in Commander as like a 5 mana, 5/5 or, you know, whatever. Right.
Yeah. You could add some activated ability to it to just like give it another use, like add some kind of cool attack trigger or something. But like I said initially, like I like the idea. Like I do like the idea. I think having protection from one player in a 4-player game is a cool idea. But this card's a little bit boring. It just does its thing and that's it.
So what do you think, Melissa? Everything Ty said about True-Name Nemesis, what do you grade in this thing? Single card, give it a grade.
Like I can't really, like, in good faith give it a good grade, you know, because like I think it was too disruptive to Legacy, especially given the fact that it was hard to find. And just not the right rate for a Commander design. Does that make it an F? Is it a true F? Well, like I did like the one thing about it. Like I like the idea of the card in general. The rate's just wrong. So like maybe a D- or a D or something.
I don't know if this is a grade that even exists in the American public school system, but I want to give it like an F+. Like it's definitely an F. Like for me anyway, it's like this card was way too impactful. It's really unfun. It's very unenjoyable. But it's like, once again, the heart is in the right place for Commander. But you know, to me, this is the card that really showed us, okay, we can't just make these Legacy shots. We got to be really careful about this. Let's not do this again. And I think we were really careful after doing this one.
Yeah, the way that I talked about how unavailable this card was did not do it justice. Like this card was truly unavailable. Like it was so hard to find, and it did weird things to game stores too, because like game stores have to order the decks in decks of 4. Right. So because the Mind Seize deck was just so much more in demand, game stores just had an abundance of the other 3 decks that they had a hard time selling because they had to order so much of the 4 decks to keep up with demand. So that was like pretty rough for them, I remember. Yeah,
we actually started doing this thing where later on, when we reprinted the decks, in every box, we would kick out one deck and put an extra Mind Seize deck in there just so we could try and get more out there, because it was a huge problem.
I did not realize that.
That's part of why now we really try hard to make sure all the decks are equally popular and balanced. And we're never perfect, but at least we're closer, because it's so bad for game stores if one deck sells through all the way and then the other decks are left on the shelf because, like, well, do they order more for just to sell the one deck? And it causes all kinds of challenges. So, all right, well, that's True-Name Nemesis. Let's get in the final part of our show, Melissa, the award show. Time for the award show today.
All right.
Let's give out some awards for Commander 2013. I added in one new award. This was a popular request from the comments. Everyone's like, you talked about all these new cards, but what about the reprints? I want an award for the reprints. So I created a new award. I call this award the most out of place reprint, which is the reprint that is, you look at this and you're like, what is this doing in these commander decks? So here are our 6 options. You're going to have to look these ones up. There is
let's do
Airy Mystics. It's a 4-dub 3/3 flyer with 1 GU. All your creatures gain Shroud until end of turn.
Yeah, I know this card from Limited.
Right.
Actually, this is just a draft card.
There's Hada Spy Patrol, which is a level up card from Rise of the Eldrazi. It's a 1U 1/1, and you can level it up into a 2/2 unblockable for 3 mana, or eventually a 3/3 Shroud unblockable. There is this one I definitely had to look up. Leonin Blade Trap. Do you know this one from original Mirrodin?
I do know this one. It has flash.
Yeah.
And it kills, it has some kind of removal ability. It either does damage to all attackers or maybe one attacker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do remember this card.
3 mana flash artifact, 2 sacrifice Leonin Blade Trap. It deals 2 damage to each attacking creature without flying.
So I was on the right track with it does damage to all attackers.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's Marrowbats, which is a 4B 4/1 flyer with pay 4 life regenerate Marrowbats, which is a rough one. There's Elvish Sky Sweeper. It's a G1/1 with 4G sack a creature, destroy target flying creature. And then finally Fisher Vent, which is a 3/RR sorcery that destroys an artifact, a land, or both an artifact and a land. Melissa, which one of these gets the award for most out of place? What is this doing here, reprint to you?
Okay. So I'm going to eliminate a bunch.
Okay.
Let's eliminate Fisher Vent.
Okay.
I see reasons for wanting to do this. It's a 2-for-1, which is relevant in Commanders. Let's eliminate that.
Yep.
Let's eliminate the Sky Sweeper.
Yep.
That card's sweet. It's on theme with the sacrifice deck. I'm going to assume it's in the sacrifice deck. Hopefully it is. It sacrifices creatures. It has repeatable removal. So eliminate that. I will eliminate the Blade Trap because it has a mass removal effect. So it's relevant. So that leaves the Bats, the Hada Spy Patrol, and the Airy Mystics.
Yeah.
Oh, these are all super weird. Wow. I have to pick one of these, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's eliminate the Mystics.
Yeah,
because
you could at least
Shroud
use
is
that
relevant.
one, right? Yeah.
Yep. So, and then we have the other 2. All right. The award goes to Hada Spy Patrol. This card is just not really something that I'm looking to put in my commander deck. It's just an unblockable dude. Who cares? You
can get the 11 mana 3/3 Shroud can't be blocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty rough. I would probably give it to the Marrowbats, but it's they're both very bad in Commander.
At least the Marrowbats is super weak, but at least you can play a Wrath and regenerate it, I guess.
That's true. All right, well, that's fine. We'll give it to the Hada Spy Patrol. You had a Spy Patrol, but you also had an award now. Let's go to Best Flavor. There are 3 cards that stood out for me. There's Bane of Progress, which we haven't even talked about really yet, but this was a big card out of this release. This is 4 GG for a 2/2. When it comes into play, you destroy all artifacts and enchantments. It gets a +1/+1 counter for each one destroyed this way. So that's pretty cool. And,
this card's awesome.
Yeah, it's a sweet card, and it's got a great name too, which I think is great. There's Mystic Barrier, which this one's not quite as well known. 4-dub enchantment. When it enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, choose left or right. Each player may attack only the nearest opponent in the last chosen direction, and planeswalkers controlled by that opponent. So you're creating a barrier. You can't get past it. That's the flavor here. You got to look in the other direction. And then the third card up for it here is Witch Hunt. Witch Hunt is 4R for an enchantment. Players can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, Witch Hunt deals 4 damage to you. Why do I want to play this? Well, because at the beginning of your end step, target opponent chosen at random gains control of Witch Hunt. So it kind of is running around pointing fingers at people and burning them. Which one gets your Best Flavor award, Melissa?
Wow. All right. So first, I must say, Wizards designers are great at designing top-down cards. These are just awesome. They were very fun to read. Okay, now I have to pick one. Oh no. All right. I think it's for me, it's between the Mystic Barrier and the Witch Hunt now. They're both super flavorful. All right, it's the Barrier. The award goes to the Barrier.
All right, Mystic Barrier for Melissa. I would give it to Witch Hunt, but I can see it either way. Those both sound pretty sweet to me.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong. The Witch Hunt is super good flavor.
The barrier is good, but barrier is also up for another award. Maybe we'll get to that one. Get into that one in a second. Maybe it'll win that one too. All right. So going into the next award here, this is the Oops Award. This award is for the card that's like, maybe we shouldn't have made that one. That was a mistake. There are 4 ones here I want to list, and we've actually already talked about all of them. There is Derevi. This is the Bant commander that you can pay 4 mana to bring in from the command zone over and over again. There is Oloro, the commander that gives you 2 life every turn. There is Marath, which is quite literally an oops of like, we just didn't put a line of text on the card that should have been on the card. And then, of course, True-Name Nemesis for creating a card which accidentally caused a huge issue in Legacy. All 4 oops cards, all for very different reasons. What do you think is the biggest oops of these, Melissa?
All right. My runner-up is going to be Derevi, just because that I cheat the commander tax thing is just not something that's just good for Commander, but the award I have to give to True-Name Nemesis. Yeah, that we already talked about why, but yeah, that card is just kind of messed up. It caused a lot of problems, both like in an entire format and also just like the fact that you couldn't find the decks anywhere. So, yep, no doubt about it in my mind.
Yeah, I think True-Name Nemesis is definitely a gaffe on this product and how it turned out. Now, granted, there are some good intentions with the card. We talked through those a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to give the Oops Award to True-Name Nemesis. It is a card that will go down in history as a card from Commander decks, and that changed how we made decks in the future to not include cards like this one. My runner-up would probably be to Oloro, but I could easily see Derevi being the other one that could take it. Just gaining 2 life every turn from the command zone. Really frustrating. But yes, all right, True Name, congratulations. You already won 1 award, so good work. On to the next award, Sweetest Legend. So this is the legend that is just the sweetest, not the strongest, just the sweetest. We've got Prossh making all those kobolds. We've got Nekusar for, being a cool build around. We've got Roon for blinking stuff, and then Jaleva for casting some stuff for free. Or if you have a different pick that we've talked about, that's cool too. Who do you have as Sweetest Legend? And I'll note an interesting note from this product is the first Commander decks had those bonus legends, kind of the additional 2-color legends in them. This product did not. So there's actually only the 10 legends that you can pick from all the decks, 2 from each. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, these are the 4 I thought were the sweetest. What do you got, Melissa, for Sweetest Legend?
I do have a soft spot for Sacrifice deck. So my award goes to Prossh. That card is just super sweet. Despite being high power level and higher than we want it to be, it's just still pretty awesome. So good job, Prossh.
I think Prossh is like, yeah, it's strong, but it's like, at least if it's strong, it's like a good kind of too strong. It like gives you some resources you can play around in, and players enjoy converting them. So I'm with you on Prossh for being the sweetest. It's a cool one. And it's also a dragon. How can you go wrong with a cool
It is a dragon.
It's like an awesome dragon.
Yeah. What more could you ask for?
Okay, next up, we've got the award for Most Weird. And, Commander products have had their share of weird cards. Last week, Skullbriar won this one, which keeps its counters as it moves around. Let's see what we're going to follow it up with. We've got Illusionist Gambit. And I want to pull up the words for this one because, wow, this has some words on it. And I would not want to inaccurately claim how this card works. Illusionist Gambit. 2 blue instant, cast this spell only during the declare blocker step on an opponent's turn. So we're starting out pretty weird. Then remove all attacking creatures from combat and untap them. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Each of those creatures attacks that combat if able. They can't attack you or planeswalkers you control that combat. So the idea is you attack me with a bunch of creatures, I cast this, and you have to basically send them to go attack other people. But it takes a lot of wild words to make that happen. So that's one of them. There's Mystic Barrier, the choose left or right card, which we just talked about. There is True-Name Nemesis, which among other things also just gives you protection from a player, which is like a brand new weird thing that we did here. There is Order of Succession, which is this wacky card. 3U, sorcery. Choose left or right, starting with you and proceeding in the chosen direction. Each player chooses a creature controlled by the next player in that direction. Each player gains control of the creature he or she chose. And then finally, once again, a card I think I mentioned earlier, I had forgotten this card existed. It was attempted to be a hoser card that just ended up being a weird card. That's Widespread Panic. 2R for an enchantment. Whenever a spell or ability causes its controller to shuffle their library, that player puts a card from their hand on top of their library. What do you got from me, Melissa? Which of these is the most weird?
Okay. Wow. All right. Let's start with that red card that you said. That card is just kind of miserable, right? Like you go to shuffle your library, but first you have to put a card from your hand on top of your library. So you just go down cards every time you have to shuffle. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, you put it on top after you shuffle. You don't shuffle the card into your deck, but you'll still have to put it on top. Yeah.
Yeah, it's giving me like Chains of the Mephistopheles vibes. Did I say that card right?
Yeah, Chains of Mephistopheles. Yeah, what a weirdo. Like I think Widespread Panic was made to be like, oh, people are shuffling too much. Let's fight that in the way that Stranglehold did. But what a weird like penalty to pay. Is that even red? I don't think that's even red. Can red do that?
I don't think so. That sounds black, honestly. Putting cards from hand, getting rid of cards in hand, that sounds like more black to me. All right, so that's definitely in the running. The other card that I think is in the running is the Illusionist Gambit, not for like function. I understand what that card does. It's pretty simple. But like the words that are on the card to make it work are super weird. Right? Like,
I had to read that card a lot of times before I figured out what it did. It's pretty strange.
Yeah, because like at first you're like, oh, so you get another attack, but they attack different people. But no, they don't get another attack. They just stop the first attack, right?
Well, I think if they're attacking, let me pull this up. The fact we're still debating this is probably a bad sign for the card. So remove all attackers from combat and attack them. Okay, yeah. So if they're attacking multiple players, doesn't matter. You remove all of them.
Yeah, it just stops the current attack, and you just attack.
Yeah,
and then you have to attack different people, right?
What a magic
card.
So
it's not like it's a simple card in like what it does in function, but like it takes you a very long time to get there. Like a lot goes through your mind. It's like, oh, an extra attack. No, it's not an extra attack. Also, like the timing's weird. You can only play it during one particular time.
Right.
But I think the red card gets my vote though. Like that's just a lot weirder. Like for both like for color pie, for unfunness. All right. Well, yeah, we'll go with that red card. That one is just a weirdo.
Yeah, the red card is really strange to me. I've got a soft spot for the Gambit too. Mystic Barrier's got a shot to me, right? Each player may attack only the nearest opponent in the last chosen direction. I mean, that's pretty wacky. Although it's easy to understand what it does at least. So that's something.
Yeah, once you understand the card, I get it. But like, yeah, that similar to the blue card, it's like once you get it, sure. I know what it does, but reading it takes a while to figure that one out.
I think I'm going to give it to the Gambit, but I cannot fault your Widespread Panic pick. Those are both pretty weird. So we'll both give out different awards for that one. 2 cards can win awards. That's fine. Let's go on to the...
we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, it's our show. They can all have awards. Why not? Have a participation trophy. True-Name Nemesis. I don't know. Okay, let's go on to the strongest card, not best card, as we just talked about last podcast.
Yep.
Strongest card, important differentiation. You can go listen to the past podcast for why that is. Okay, strongest card I have down here, Derevi, Oloro, Prossh, True-Name Nemesis, and Toxic Deluge. What's getting strongest card?
All right, I think we have to like kind of clarify, do we mean strongest card in multiplayer or strongest card in the format that it was most played in? Right, because there's the answer will be different, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that True Name is clearly the answer if it's just like strongest Magic card across many formats, right?
That's why we have to clarify that, right? Because like if we're talking about just Commander, which I can see that because we're talking about Commander decks here, then the answer is not True-Name Nemesis.
Well, if we assume we're going to give it to True Name on the Legacy front, let's just set that aside. Let's give that like the honorary like Breaks Legacy trophy. Which of the other cards takes it for just being like the strongest?
All right, can you say all the options one more time?
Yeah, Derevi, Oloro, Prossh, and Toxic Deluge.
Okay, it's probably Prossh, just for the sheer amount of tokens it makes for its mana cost, right?
Yeah, it's like really strong on cast. Oloro is like super strong in terms of like it costs you 0 mana to just get all the bonuses, right? Which is pretty good too.
Oloro is like, so it's a 6 mana card, right? And then you have to, then you have to, I don't know. Usually you have to untap with it, right?
Yep.
So like the difference here is Prossh is I get immediate value right away, and the other guy is I have to untap with it. Once you do untap with it, it probably gives you more value than Prossh, but like. Yeah, so usually when I'm evaluating cards, I think about it in terms of like, what can this get me right now? because untapping with a creature is pretty hard, especially a 6-mana creature. So that's why I went with Prossh.
But it's pretty sweet if our sweetest legend and our strongest card are the same card. That means you've like put the power in the right place, right? You know? So
yeah,
I guess
it is definitely a sweet card.
I guess I could see the argument for Prossh. I can buy it. Like I was gonna say Oloro because it costs you no mana, or Derevi because you could like do, recast it or cast it for the entire game. But it might just be Prossh. Like it gives you so much cardboard material for the mana cost, right? It just comes back over and over again.
Like, so imagine that the player kills your creature every time, right? Then Prossh is clearly the strongest because it gets you so much more when you cast it.
Yeah.
So the other guy, Derevi, yes, it's cheap in Commander, great, but like its value on the board is not as strong as the other two cards that we're talking about. And then Oloro is more expensive. You don't get like its full potential until you untap with it. And the free ability is like only in the command zone, since it's only 2 life. So like, minor impact, I think. So that's why it's Prossh for me.
No, that's a strong argument for Prossh. I'll admit, I did not come into this thinking I was going to vote for Prossh, but I think you might have convinced me on this one. I mean, Oloro, just like in my head, Oloro is just like free life every turn, but maybe that's not even good. Maybe it just means people attack you more. They're like, you have extra life, attack you.
So like the thing is like free life is annoying. It's like, it sucks that you can't interact with the free life. Like that's more like not fun than it is strong. But if we're talking about strength here, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot has to go right for Oloro to be strong. Like mostly in that you have to have it in play and then untap with it and then start doing its thing. It takes a lot longer to get going. All
right, I buy Prossh. I buy Prossh. I'll say Prossh. If you disagree in the comments, let us know. Let us know what you would pick for the strongest
I'm interested
card.
in hearing everybody else's opinion on that.
And then also, of course, that we all both agree, I think, that True-Name Nemesis wins like the in all of Magic strongest card award for this one, just not in Commander in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, weakest card award. We've got 3 choices here. We've got Curse of the Forsaken. That's the curse that gives you a life when you attack the player who is enchanting. Poor white curse. The other 2 are Hooded Horror, which is not a card we've really talked about so far. This is one of the uncommons. It is 4B for a 4/4 horror creature, and it can't be blocked if defending player controls the most creatures or is tied for most creatures. So best case, you're playing 5 mana 4/4 unblockable. That's what you got. And then the last card is Tempt with Glory. That's the white tempting offer card that puts you a counter on all your creatures. A lot of the time, I think it's just going to be like put 1 counter on all your stuff and other people won't opt in. Or even if one other player does, you put 2 counters on all your stuff, which is like, okay. Those are my 3 picks. What do you think?
Yep. All right. Let's just eliminate Hooded Horror because even though that card is pretty weak in a Commander game, like this card is very strong in something like Limited. Like this card does have a use as a creature. It does something, unlike the Curse of the Forsaken, which does close to nothing. Sorry, Curse. I don't want to talk so bad about you, but you're just not a very good card. I think, wow, these cards are both so weak. It's hard to pick one. I think I have to go with the Curse. At least Tempt with Glory can like get you some kind of board presence, even though it's expensive.
My one argument for the Curse would be that if you are playing a life gain deck full of like a Johnny's Pridemates or whatever, maybe the Curse is actually good, or it's at least playable. Like if you have a Oloro in play and you have Curse of the Forsaken on them and you attack with 3 creatures, you can get 3 Oloro triggers. So like that's something,
Yeah, but you can say that about any card that has repeatable life gain. It doesn't make it strong. Like, it's mostly about the other cards, I think. Like I can make a similar argument with Tempt with Glory. It's like, oh, what if I'm playing a bunch of +1/+1 counter rewards? Then I definitely want to put this card in my deck. Well,
you know what, Christopher Forsaken?
Is that actually true?
You know what, Christopher Forsaken? I tried my best to argue for you, but I can't get past the obvious problem with this card of it's 3 mana, gives you some life over the course of the game, and also gives you your opponent's life. I don't know.
Also, like at least have it be gain 2 life. 1 life is just such an insignificant amount of life. I mean, I guess it's like per creature, so maybe it's not that bad, but like, I don't know. This card reads just very unappealing is the word I want to use.
Well, and also like if the goal of these curses is to try and get other people to attack your opponents, I don't even know that this card does that goal. It's like, is that 1 life really going to tilt you over on who you're going to attack? right?
It'll do it if the person has the Oloro in play. Like then they'll be like, oh, do I want to give them cards? But like outside of like any life gain rewards, like no, it doesn't do that.
All right, Curse the Forsaken. Sorry. All right, and then finally, which card won the set? And this is not the strongest card, but just like you look back at the set, you think of this card as like the timeless card from the set. It's like, the emblematic card. The cards I have down are Bane of Progress, which has seen a lot of play, a Theomancer, which is a beloved card, shows up in Cube as well as Commander, Prossh, Nekusar, and then a card we haven't talked about at all, which is Primal Vigor, which is like a fixed doubling season, basically. It just doesn't happen on your Planeswalkers. A really popular card, even though it hasn't really shown up in any of these other discussions. What do you got for winning the set, Melissa?
All right. So I guess I'll talk about two answers, and then I'll see if I can narrow it down. So my first answer is Prossh. Like, very iconic commander at this point. People are still playing it to this day. And as we already discussed, it's very powerful and pretty awesome and very cool. So that is in the running. I think Primal Vigor is also in the running because this card is just pretty awesome. It's just like really fun to build around and very powerful, and people really like it. Given everything that I said, I think I talked myself into Prossh on this one.
I think we're going to give Prossh the trifecta here of sweetest legend, strongest card, and winner of the set. So, I mean, good work, Prossh. There's a reason why so many players love this card, I guess. It's the reason why we showed it off with Commander Legends on the foil S sheet too, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
I think I'm with you. I'll give it to Prossh. Although, man, it's a bummer Primal Vigors did not get a lot of chatter on these other options, but there you go. It's a great card, though.
Hey, it was in the running.
It was in the running.
We talked about it for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It has that going for it.
Just like, miss all these other cards we had to talk about. Like, we didn't really get to talking about Primal Vigor anywhere today. It's just like, well, yeah, it's a fine card. It's doubling season. Doubling season's going to doubling season. And, it's cool. It's nice.
I did learn that this is in the set today. I didn't know where this was from.
Yes, that's right. Here's where it showed up. All right. Well, Melissa, let's close it out. Final grade for Commander 2013. We gave the grades to the individual decks. We looked over the cards. We talked about what's sweet. Talked about the cycles. Now it's time. Let's bring it in. Final grade. What are we doing?
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's kind of think this through. So the mistakes were like breaking Commander rules, right? You have several cards that just like broke the rules in an unfun way. I have a trigger from the command zone, or I break the commander tax. So that's a fail in my mind. You have the True-Name Nemesis problem, which is a pretty big fail. And then for good stuff, it gave us a bunch of like iconic legends that we talked about. A lot of them are still played to this day, but like the mistakes are pretty real.
I'll also note that you talked about iconic legends there. Looking through the legends list, there are a few that are iconic. You have your Proshs, Derevis, and so on. But a lot of the iconic ones are iconic because of power, like Oloro and Derevi, and not necessarily because Roon, right? But not necessarily because I love them a ton. And then some of them we just don't see at all anymore.
Okay. All right. So that is a good point about like the power level was so high, and that's a reason why they're iconic legends, because nothing can really compete with them. Right.
When you compare them to like last week's legends, for example, a lot of those are like not the strongest legend, but players still play with Zedru or whatever because it's really fun.
Yep. That is a good point. Okay. That knocks it down some. So like it's probably somewhere like C- then.
C-, yeah. Yeah, I think this is like a D+ C- for me. It's definitely, compared to the first series of Commander decks, I feel like it tried to explore some different space, which I applaud them for. Like, definitely the team did a lot of cool work exploring different space. The problem is I think they uncovered some problematic space in the working from your commands and stuff with Oloro, which when we get to Eminence in C-17, I'll have a whole section to say about that.
Yep. Definitely.
Derevi coming in from the command zone. And then, of course, it's really hard to overlook the True-Name Nemesis error. With that said, there are some sweet resounding cards from it. There's Prossh, which I think is a pretty cool design. Nekusar, there's some winners for sure. But, looking through the cards in this set too, there's not a lot of cards in this set that still see play today. Like, basically there's two categories of cards almost. It's like there are the really strong cards that see play now because they're really powerful. And there are the cards that are way too weak, so no one like thinks about them today. And there aren't a lot of cards that fill that like space of, oh, this is fun and I like to play it, but it's not that strong, right? It's either like it's really strong and it's appealing because it's strong, or it's really weak and it's kind of unappealing, So, yeah, I guess C- is where I'm going to stand on this. It did do a cool job of evolving them. Also, they knew way less then than we know now, right?
Right. I guess some other things to give it more worse grades is like the play pattern stuff that we talked about earlier, like Roon being like super hard to play against because it could do anything. And also that Naya creature, which was even more egregious. It's like, wow, this can do any like iteration of like any mana cost, any number of abilities, and all at instant speed. Like, so like that I think is a problem. Anything else that we missed? I don't know, but like that might have knocked it down to D.
The decks are also like a little like, half and half, which is cool in some ways, but also like not cool in other ways,
Yeah, disconnected themes. Like I have artifacts, and what was the other theme?
Artifacts and life gain.
Stuff. Life gain, sure.
Right, and untap, and blink, which like kind of go together, but not actually, because you want to like untap your things that have tap abilities, which like blinking them doesn't help with, right?
But some of the themes were totally fine, like Jund Sacrifice.
Yeah, the Jund deck is sweet. Like
that was pretty cohesive.
The Jund deck is like the all-star deck for me from this one for sure. Yeah, considering that, like, I do appreciate, like, you always have to in Magic like push a little bit and try and like push the edges of what something can be, so you learn about it. And this set, I think, took the very successful things we did in the first Commander series and said, hey, we're going to try that and then push the edges of what Commander can be. And they ran into some places that weren't as good, like Oloro and Derevi. But on the flip side, they did find things like the Prossh ability and Marath ability, where it scales with the mana you've cast for your commander, which we did end up using later. So they came up with some good stuff. So it's for that reason I think I'm going to stick on C-, but I could see D. I could totally see D for this. I just think like it was early. They did some exploring. Unfortunately, like they found more bad than they found good, but they found some good stuff too. So yeah. So you're gonna give it a D+ for your final?
If only I knew the difference between C- or C- and D+, because like I have no idea.
If there are any American school teachers out there in the audience, please just let us know in the comments. It would really, we could probably Google this, I guess, but we're just making it up.
My initial thing was C-. All
right.
So I'll just stick with C-.
All right. Both of us C-.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. C-. Sure. Sounds great. Well, Melissa, this has been a lot of fun. We got through Commander 2013 and a bit about the Commander's Arsenal too, all along the way. If you all enjoyed this out there, please leave a comment down below. Let us know if you want to do more of these. Provided that there's enough excitement, we'll do Commander 2014 in the future, but you let us know if you're enjoying this or if you have any feedback. Also, as you'll note throughout this whole time, we gave a bunch of notes about like how what was posted in the comments influenced what we did in this show, parts that we cut from the first episode, things we added for this episode. So like, if you're enjoying it and you have suggestions or any kind of good feedback, please drop it below. Whether it's I love this or I didn't like this part, it's all really useful for us. Anything you want to close out with, Melissa, on your end?
No.
We said it all. We said everything.
Just like hope you guys enjoy it. It's been fun for us, and I think we would like to keep doing it. So if you guys like it, just let us know so we know to keep doing it for you guys.
Of course, you can find us on Twitter. Of course, I'm at Gavin Verhey. She's at Melissa DeTora. Just our names. We've got great SEO. And we'll talk with you again very soon. In the meantime, you have fun revisiting your Commander favorites. You got this. All right, let's talk about the stack. No, it's actually not that hard. So the stack is a key part of Magic. It's kind of how everything happens in the game, but it can be a little tricky and it can be tough for a lot of players to wrap their heads around. So here's how the stack works. When you play a card, when you tap the mana for it, you cast it. If you play any spell in Magic, it goes on